How many of you have children or plan to have children? Anyone? Okay. How many of you consider yourself Pakistani Americans? How many of you consider yourself Muslim Americans? Okay. So I'm going to share some facts with you. There are about 700,000 Pakistani Americans in this country. There are about 3.5 million Muslim Americans. So every Pakistani, 5 times Muslim American. And there are 7 million Jews in this country. Do you consider Jewish American the most successful group in this country? Do we all agree on that? Okay. Right. So let's put it this way. The education of Pakistani Americans and Muslim Americans is same. For 700,000 Pakistanis, there are about 79 non-profit organizations in this country. For 3.5 million Muslims, there are almost 3,000 non-profit organizations. So the Muslims Americans have done well. For 7 million Jews, which is twice the Muslim population, how many non-profit organizations are there? About 13,000. Just American Jewish Foundation has 34,000 employees. So what am I trying to explain? What I'm trying to explain here is that the organization, the people do not become successful only because they have good education. They become successful because there is an organization or there is a platform or there is an advocacy available for them. We have done very well. Our children have done very well. But how many of you can really associate a Pakistani American or Muslim American organization for your children's success? Can anyone do that? If I ask this question, Jewish American community, they'll always say that someone has opened the door for us. So, Bilal, can we have the slides of Open? So I want to talk to you a little bit about Open. Open is the organization of Pakistani entrepreneurs and professionals. How many of you are not members of Open? Anyone who's not a member? So I'm not going to force, but it's a call to action that this is an organization which was started in 1998 from Boston. Now we have 17 global chapters. From Toronto, 11 chapters in US, 1 in London, 1 in Berlin, and 3 vibrant chapters in Pakistan. And we are soon opening 1 in Dubai and then other parts of the world as well. The purpose of this organization is very simple. How do we create an opportunity for our next generation? You've seen from some speakers that they have done so well. Open is the platform where all of us can connect and connect on a favorable basis. This is less about us, but it is more about our next generation. Most of our children have done well because they have good education, but they don't consider us as role models. It's very difficult to coach your own son or daughter because when they think as us, they think that uncle and auntie is going to take us to another Pakistani event and then try to find some rishtas and all that. Open is not that. We are a business opportunity. We really want to create that platform where we can connect them. Can we have the slides open? So this is, can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah. Okay, so, yeah, clicker. Okay, thank you. So let me tell you, and I'm not showing off, but our organization, we have a network of about 370,000, 75,000. The education, 75% of our members have master's degrees or above. 450 plus charter members. We are very selective in making someone a member. And we have 17 chapters that talked about it. The estimated combined net worth of our members is $7 billion. Pakistan is struggling for $3 billion. The capital raise from 2017 and 26 is $2.3 billion. And the companies that our members have exited from 2017 to 2026 is north of $16 billion. So if you want your next generation to connect with any of these entrepreneurs, I strongly recommend that you become a part of Open. May I request all the chapter members, chapter leaders who are here still in the room to kindly stand up. Please stand up and be recognized. So please connect with us. We are here to help you and give a lot of applause to all our members. Once again, if you are here in Dallas, Khurram Agha and his team would be more than happy to connect with you. And the only request I have, because you have paid for it, you have come to this event, Mubi's doing a great job in motivating everyone. But please, we have networking breaks, but while our speakers are here, please sit in the room, invest time in them. Thank you so much. Looking forward to a wonderful day with the rest of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Those numbers are amazing. I love that.
We raised 15 million in seed round. I'm the sole founder of that company. And in 3 years, I've brought it to an evaluation of 150 million. So please do not mistake me for just an academic professor. I'm a serial entrepreneur now. And for my last company, my big supporter was Peter Thiel. Many of you may know that name because he's Vice President J.D. Vance's mentor. They have invested big time in me. And now for Series A, they have already assured me that I don't need to go out to get Series A. They're going to write the check. So that company will be taking the bispecific antibody I've developed to clinical trial. For this second company, PredictRx, for which I'm here, I'm raising right now a seed round of 5 million. I've already raised 4 million. I have an anchor investor who has already assured me of Series A. I have a huge anchor investor who has assured me Series B money. I have only $1 billion left to raise for this seed round for the company that I'm showing you. Guys, this will be worth billions of dollars. Where's the imagination of Pakistani entrepreneurs? Why aren't you guys all throwing money at me?
Thank you so much, Dr. Azra. So, quick story on that. I happened to share, Zulfi myself happened to share a ride. And our Uber driver, whose Uber name was John, but real name is Hussein. So we still have to wonder why he went from Hussein to John. He heard the story because she was giving Zulfi and I a pitch. And this was what, a 7-minute ride? And in 7 minutes, Hussein says, who do I write the check to? If you imagine an Uber driver in Dallas at 8:07 a.m. in the morning, heard a 7-minute pitch and decides to write a check. So all of you in the room are much bigger than that. But again, as I said, Open does not endorse anything, just brings the people to the table. Obviously, Dr. Raza is going to be with us throughout. And as she is, please reach out to her. She was gracious to sponsor. So thank you so much, Dr. Saab, for that. With that, let's go over to Mustafa, our good friend Mustafa Adar from Vilas Capital. Mustafa is a good friend of mine. He does passive real estate investment. He's going to talk to us about that and also talk to us a little bit about Open. So all yours.
Hey, Assalamu alaikum, guys. Who here is new to Open? Raise your hand. So your takeaway from today, if you do nothing, is just to join the organization. Because you can reflect on your life and say, how many times are you in the room with somebody like Dr. Azra Khan? Let's give another round of applause for her. I've had the pleasure of being on many stages. I've never heard somebody actually officially cure cancer, which is no joke. So again, for a lot of us who are maybe new to Dallas, maybe new to Open, you probably entered today wondering, why Open? Why am I going to this? This feels uncomfortable, etc. Open is one of those organizations where you can really find people with similar values to connect with the ultimate goal of actually growing. And that's their slogan right there, connect and grow. That's no different than the company that I'm here representing today, My Thin Journey. Our firm basically focuses on financial literacy with the goal of helping you learn what you don't know. And then use that knowledge to connect you with the right resources to help you grow. That could be somebody like Dr. Azra Khan. It could be passive real estate. Sorry. Raza, sorry, I apologize. Or it could be something like structuring passive real estate investment opportunities. Do you have the clicker? So with that, there's a dual mandate of education, creating value, building financial literacy. That way you can uplift yourself. It's one of those situations where a lot of us work hard and are in a position to generate revenue and make money. But we're not always in a position to make our money work harder than we do. And that's the ultimate goal. That's how you create financial freedom. That's what we focus on at the core level. And then if at a deeper level, you're in a situation where there's gaps in your portfolio, where you need to invest in real estate to have a more diversified portfolio, then that's what we focus on. There are a couple of different ways we do that. There's an income strategy, more of a fixed return. There's a growth strategy that focuses more on long-term yearly growth. And then there's those tax-efficient strategies for people who are making too much money and supporting the government too much. then we build out tax efficient strategies for you there. With the income strategy, it's really for somebody who's looking for that consistent income. That could be a guy who serially invests in startups. He's an angel investor. He's investing for the 5 to 10 year plus horizon, and maybe he doesn't have liquidity. Maybe he doesn't have monthly income. In those strategies, we build out real estate investment vehicles that pay you monthly. In another strategy, the growth strategy, what we're doing is we're building a diversified portfolio that targets annualized returns. That way you make money on a yearly basis. The difference here is making money monthly versus yearly and progressively in more tax efficient vehicles. And then for others, we have single syndications where maybe we'll do some ground up construction. We'll target strong double-digit IRRs, strong double-digit returns. And in those strategies, typically there are longer hold periods. Typically they can be built out to be more tax efficient where you make more money and you pay less in taxes. It depends on the situation. This is an example of a 138 unit building that we're building right now, about 30 to 45 minutes from New York City. And it's just a small example of the types of projects we do. This one specifically is in an opportunity zone with a 30-year tax abatement. For a lot of people, that's jargon, and I understand that. The point is to say that all of these different strategies are designed to build wealth for you. Ultimately, I'll have a booth outside. There's a few t-shirts if you want. They won't last long, but feel free to stop by, pick up a t-shirt, scan the QR code, learn more about what we do and how we can help you grow. Thank you guys for your time.
So I got an idea. All these people can invest with you, make money, and then take all their money and invest here. That's not a bad idea. ACs can work together.
I thought you were going to tell me to donate more. Even none of both. We can do both.
We can do both.
We can do both.
We can do invest there, invest here, and then help support here. The world.
Yeah, inshallah.
Awesome, awesome.
That's the real inshallah, not the normal Pakistani inshallah.
Yeah, the real inshallah, right? The real Pakistan inshallah. Pakistan inshallah is so everything.
No, I don't do that. I already do the real inshallah. You know.
Got it. That's great. Mustafa is a good friend of mine. He's been a great supporter. I must say, for those of you that were there in Washington, D.C. last year, he helped us a lot in the fundraising that helped the Pakistan Children's Foundation Hospital as well. You saw him last night. He's a very generous soul. I always tell people that you can easily tell by the people's generosity. Obviously, we've got two wonderful folks here who've done amazing things for the world, not just for themselves. Everybody has to make money, but at the end of the day, the work that they do that helps a lot more people is immaculate. I must also say, just sitting here looking at the crowd, one of the things that Dr. Khalid and I know Dr. Khalid mentioned that earlier today, but I think, Mr. Khan, is this the largest gathering of open nights? The largest gathering of open nights. So let's get our Dallas feel. I know you all came to see me, but that's okay. I'll take the credit for it. I know we have a little bit of time. Moby, you're going to keep us honest on the time, right? So I have a quick question for both of you, and then we will open it up, if you have time, to the audience to see if they have a question. I know you are an esteemed author as well. Can you talk about your book a minute?
My book is called The First Cell and the Human Costs of Pursuing Cancer to the Last. So what I did is that I'm practicing oncologist who sees 30 to 40 cancer patients every week, even today. I have a big research lab at Columbia University where I work. I have multiple companies, but I'm also a cancer widow. My own husband, who was the head of the cancer center at the university in Chicago, died of the very leukemia he was trying to cure all his life. When our daughter was only 4 years old, he was diagnosed. And so I had looked at cancer from every angle possible. No one needs to lecture me about any aspect of cancer. And what I noticed was the human anguish that we cause to the patients. I'd been practicing oncology for 20 years when my husband was diagnosed, but I did not realize how painful a disease it is until I shared a bed with a cancer patient. How horrible it is. These are the things that then forced me to write the book, to look at everything related to cancer through the prism of human anguish and suffering. What is it we are doing to patients? And how can we stop this? Not this BS that we hear all the time about 30% patients' lives being extended by 2.5 months. That is not proper treatment. The only treatment would be prevention. So I write this book. Immediately I become the pariah in the field because my colleagues think I have written the satanic verses of medicine. Because I'm basically saying that everything you guys are doing is wrong. You need to stop pushing these horrible treatments on people, these monstrous therapies we have developed. Stop it. At least imagine a better future. Where is the vision? Where is the imagination? So everyone hates me. But you know what? अगर छूट गया एक नशीमन तो क्या गम, मकामाते आहो फुगा और भी हैं, तू शाही है परवाज है काम तेरा, तेरे सामने आसमां और भी हैं.
Mustafa, real quick, I know everybody in US always talks about tax efficient strategies, right? So if you could just speak a minute to that, investment in this program, would that help us?
Sure. So I have a disclaimer up there. Please read it. Basically, it says, don't sue me, don't sue Open. Do your own due diligence. Ultimately, everyone is looking to save on taxes, and there's no one size fits all. Sometimes the guy's making 25K and he wants to save on taxes, and he's paying no taxes. Sometimes the guy's making 500K and he's paying a lot in taxes, and he needs the right strategy, but then the return profile doesn't feel high enough. So it's one of those things, Amir Bhai, that there's a lot of nuances. I don't like one size fits all, answers. I have an earlier slide, but I don't know how to use the clicker. Okay, I figured it out. Sorry. So this is the slide that would talk about tax efficient strategies. It's something that you hear pushed a lot. It's called value add. You buy something old, you make it nicer, you raise rents, and along the way you get something called a negative K1. I'm not your CPA, this is not tax advice. Your negative K1 basically means you made income, but you're reporting a loss. That happens through depreciating the asset, which means you took on typically leverage. Some people don't like leverage. So there's a lot of layers, Amirbal. It's about sitting down with the person and speaking at their level, really getting that feedback, slowing down the process, and making sure you're doing right by the person, if that makes sense.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Before we go, I just want to say, if we can support Dr. Azra and find a cure for cancer, wouldn't that be something great that all of us, each one of us, is there anybody, let's do this. We have 1 minute left. Raise your hands if you know anybody that's either had cancer, currently has cancer, or has gone through any treatment. Raise your hands. Okay, look at that. Almost the entire room, right?
Extremely tragic.
Extremely tragic, right?
Yeah.
So please stop by her booth, talk to her, have a personal conversation. Same thing for Mustafa, helping a lot of people out there, helping Open as well. Let's give both of these people a round of applause.
Our next speaker is Saeed Muzammil Hassan Zeri.
Assalamu alaikum everyone. आप लोग को आवाज आ रही है पीछे तक? Is this mic distance fine? Okay, great. A little bit about me for those of you who don't know. My name is Saeed Muzammil Hassan Zaidi. I have been in the digital media space in Pakistan for the last 15 years. 5 years ago, I started a podcast where I've had conversations with over 500 thought leaders across different industries, including 2 former prime ministers, Imran Khan, and the caretaker Prime Minister, Anwarul Haq Kakar, across multiple politicians, but politicians, I don't say it very proudly because that's very polarizing, across different industries, business leaders, startups, VCs, and really just trying to understand the fundamental problems. A lot of times we talk about structural problems for Pakistan, really trying to understand what's going on there across different industries. And it is in that same context that I wanted to share my understanding of what I think is the biggest missed opportunity for Pakistan. So there was a presentation that had a lot of visual cues to it. Unfortunately, the talk that I wanted to give, your presentation is not the same one. Nonetheless, I wanted to give you some context. In 2019, there was a global creator called Mark Wines I'm sure some of you have seen his content. He actually took a trip down to Lahore, a day-long trip where he did a 16-hour tour of the food in Lahore. So he went from Gawal Mandi to different food carts, so on and so forth. Interestingly, he documented the entire heritage of halwa puri as dough met hot oil, a texture he found soft yet delicately crispy. He encountered lassi crowned with buffalo butter, so pure it rendered him speechless. I want you to focus on these words, buffalo butter. We never think about lassi with that particular word. He talks about chickpeas, soft, moist, yet crispy for regular chaat that he had on the street. And when he introduced that chai wala, Muhammad Ilyas, who was literally a cart vendor that you would normally go to Pakistan and you would ignore because he's just a cart vendor. But when he spoke to Muhammad Ilyas, he asked him how long he's been doing this, and he told his story. 40 years he's been coming there since he was 8 years old with his father, making the same chart. And when he had that chart, he sort of shared that experience as unbelievably mouth-watering and phenomenal. It's very interesting because this single piece of narrative had 18 million views at the time. And this was, again, 2019, or very early days of when a lot of these foreigners had started coming to Pakistan. They started to experience Pakistan. There was no formal pathway for tourism, but these were very, very early, entrance into the Pakistani sort of tourism space. The response was a collective global awakening. In the comments, travelers from 40 countries confessed they had never seen a food culture this profound. This is genuinely, truly the power of a genuine story over a government brochure. Now, here's a paradox I want you to consider. If a stranger from Arizona can generate 18 million moments of desire for Pakistan simply by sitting with a street vendor, why is it that restaurants in the US, when they're serving that same phenomenal food, they do it in fluorescent lighting with laminated menus? The distance between what Pakistan is and how it presents itself isn't a structural failure of the state, which more often than not, when I've spoken to people across the world, they've told me it is the government's fault and the government's responsibility. It is a branding problem, and it is the single greatest economic premium waiting to be captured by the people in this room. We are living through three simultaneous tectonic shifts, and I want to name them quickly because they form the backdrop of everything I'm about to say. The first is a geopolitical shift. Most recently, to a lot of our surprise, you all have seen how Pakistan has suddenly started to play a very central role in regional events, and that has seemingly for the first time given us a lot of leverage as well as a lot of positive branding as well. The world is moving from a unipolar world, American order, to a multipolar world. Pakistan, almost by accident, sits at the intersection of every major power center. West Asia to our west with its $5 trillion GDP, South Asia to our east with another $5 trillion in GDP, ASEAN beyond that with its own $5 trillion in GDP, and the Eurasian Economic Bloc to the north with over $8 trillion in collective GDP. We are not on the periphery of this new world, we are at the roundabout in its center. The second shift is intelligence, which itself is becoming a commodity. AI is to knowledge work what textile outsourcing was to manufacturing. It is going to compress margins, eliminate entry barriers, and flood every market with cheap, competent output. I'll come back to this because it is the engine of everything. The third shift is financial. Digital currencies and global payment rails are connecting the world's economy in ways that has historically bypassed countries like Pakistan. Again, you guys have probably heard about the Pakistan Virtual Asset Regulatory Authority, how stablecoins are formally not only being legalized, but actually aggressively being pushed in Pakistan. Now, the disconnect within the digital currency and the global financial systems in Pakistan is ending. And these three shifts all converging, all favoring Pakistan on paper, yet here we are still arguing about what we have to offer. Now, my question is why? I want to take you back to the 1980s and the rise of textile outsourcing to Asia. When manufacturing moved to low-cost countries, something remarkable happened. The cost of producing a garment collapsed. A shirt that cost $20 to make now costs $2. This should have been catastrophic for clothing brands. It should have been a race to the bottom. And again, a very similar thought process right now. We talk about AI all the time, where if, at a fraction of the cost, if the machine can do everything, where is the moat? What do you really do? Now, while everybody thought that for most fashion brands, there is no business model anymore, considering the cost is so cheap, the barrier to entry has completely faded, yet the opposite happened. Luxury fashion exploded. LVMH, which now owns Louis Vuitton, Dior, and dozens of other brands, is today worth over $300 billion. Hermes sells a bag for $10,000 that cost a few $100s to make. Brand image is now the single largest driver of purchasing decisions in the luxury market, accounting for 24% of influence, ahead of style, quality, and price combined. Overall, the global luxury spending reached $1.48 trillion in 2024, and according to analysts, it will reach $2.5 trillion by 2030. What happened? When the product was commoditized, the story became the moat. The brand that survived and thrived were not the one who made better shirts. They were the ones who made you feel something when you put on the shirt. Heritage, craft, identity, aspiration. The story became more valuable than the product. Now fast forward to today. AI is doing to the services and software industry exactly what textile outsourcing did to manufacturing. Today, anyone can build an app. Anyone can write code. I know, Abez bhai, aap baithe hain, wo keh rahe hain ki no, anybody cannot build an app. But that's the prevailing narrative. Anyone can write code, design a logo, produce a video, draft a contract, analyze a balance sheet. The cost of component output is collapsing towards zero, and the services industry, which Pakistan has been trying to build for almost 2 decades, is about to be flooded with cheap AI-generated competitors from every corner of the earth. This should be terrifying, but here's what 15 years in digital media has taught me. It is absolutely not. Because I have watched this play out in miniature on my phone in real time. Every year on YouTube, thousands of creators produce technically perfect content, good cameras, great editing, and excellent SEO, and yet they go nowhere. And then one person with nothing but a genuine story and a specific point of view builds a following of millions and turns it into a real business. The technical barrier was irrelevant. The story was everything. When everything becomes equally capable, the only differentiator, I believe, is what is irreducibly human. And what is irreducibly human is narrative. Culture, hospitality, a specific way of seeing the world. This is the insight I'm standing on. In the age of AI, Pakistan's greatest economic asset isn't its engineers, it is our story. And right now, the story has no author. Here's how I know the story is there. Over the past 5 years, thousands of foreign content creators have visited Pakistan, as I've shared before as well, and documented what they found. They came in completely randomly. They were not directed towards any particular thing. And yet, increasingly, they converged towards a few set of ideas. Now, as they documented all of what they found, this is, I would argue, the most valuable market research Pakistan has ever received, because it is completely unfiltered. These creators had no incentive to be flattering. In many cases, a lot of them not only gave very honest reviews, but when they came to Pakistan and praised Pakistan in the same breath, because a lot of them were entering through India, in the same breath, they would in many times critique their experiences in India, which again, for a Pakistani viewer, is very fascinating, because we, more often than not, look at Pakistan with a very critical lens. But when you hear a lot of them talking about particularly India versus Pakistan, they tell us the infrastructure is radically better than what they experienced in India. The cleanliness is phenomenally more than what they experienced in India. And they keep on converging towards, and keep this in mind, over the last 5 years, the prevailing narrative was we had faltered while India had prevailed. And yet, as they shared all of this, these are the same people who came to Pakistan the same way they went to Morocco, Colombia, or Japan, and they told their audiences what they actually experienced. What they said almost universally was 2 things. The people are extraordinary, and the food is unlike they have ever tasted. Hospitality and food. These weren't talking points in a government brochure. These were the organic conclusions of independent observers from dozens of countries. This is brand insight that most countries would pay tens of millions of dollars in focus groups and brand audits. Pakistan got it for free. And here's another paradox that keeps me up at night. Japanese cuisine has conquered the world. Chinese food is everywhere. Indian food has gone mainstream in every major Western city. Persian food is having its moment. And yet Pakistani cuisine, which these same foreign creators have called revelatory, has almost no global presence. Why? I've been to dozens of Pakistani restaurants in the United States over the last 10 months. Walked into any one of them. What do you see? Fluorescent lighting, a laminated menu, table and chair from Walmart. There is food that tastes like home, but feels like a hospital cafeteria. There is no story being told. There is no experience being curated. The restaurant owner is living in a cocoon serving the diaspora and wondering why the Gora does not come. The Gora is telling you on camera with 18 million views that they love your food, and yet your restaurant has absolutely no Yelp reviews from non-Desis. And it's not unique to restaurants. It is the operating model for the entire Pakistani services economy. We build a good product, we deliver it competently, and then we get out of the way and let the client put their name on it. We've seen this happen with pink Himalayan salt, something that is exclusively inherently Pakistani. It goes to Dubai, gets branded by a different company based out of India, and sold all over the world. We saw that with Pakistani basmati rice. Pakistan is one of the world's top 5 freelancing markets with more than 2.3 million active freelancers, and yet most of them are completely invisible. They do the work, the Western brands get the credit, we start the cycle over. We have the product, we lack the story around the product. And in the age of AI, that is the only thing that will matter. So why haven't we fixed this? There are 2 reasons, and I want to be honest about both. The first is structural. We have outsourced our national story to the government. We wait for the Ministry of Tourism, the Ministry of IT, or the cultural attaché to position Pakistan on the world stage. But governments are by definition the worst brand builders in the world. They are slow, political, consensus-driven, and accountable to everyone, which means they are accountable to no one. India's global soft power was not built by the Indian government. It was built by Bollywood, by tech entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley, by restaurants in London, by yoga studios in New York. The government followed, the private sector led. The second reason is internal. We haven't done the hard work of knowing ourselves. Brand requires radical focus. Knowing what you're for and having the discipline to reject everything that you're against. It requires ethics, consistency. Building a brand is ultimately a promise you make and keep over time. And we are culturally a people who chase the fastest returns and the biggest numbers. Building a brand is the opposite impulse. It is patient, it is slow, it compounds. And here's what I want to say to the people in this room. You are not the average. You are exactly the people who understand compounding. You have built careers on delayed gratification. You are the proof that Pakistanis can build for a long term. You are also the ones with the most at stake and yet the most to offer. Let me put numbers to this. Pakistan's IT and services exports have hit $3.8 billion annually, with monthly records now crossing over $437 million, representing 26% year-on-year growth. The government's official target is $15 billion in IT exports by 2030. Most analysts project the sector could realistically hit $10 billion by 2029. Every government for the past 2 decades have been chasing a $35 billion services exports number. It appears in every economic blueprint, every 5-year plan, every finance minister's speech, and every time it remains aspirational because we keep trying to get there through volume. More freelancers, more companies, more outputs without solving the brand premium problem. If a Pakistani software engineer is billing $25 an hour and an equivalent engineer at an Indian firm with strong branding is billing $60, you don't close that gap by working harder. You close it by building the story that justifies the premium. A 2x to 3x brand premium on $15 billion in exports doesn't just get you to $35 billion. It gets you there sustainably, with margin, with equity value, and with a compounding effect that builds year over year. The $35 billion isn't a volume problem. It is a brand problem. I want you to become the authors of Pakistan's story. Not through a committee, not through a government initiative, one business, one restaurant, one farm, one product at a time. Let me be specific. If you run a services business, stop hiding behind your client's brand, put your name on it, build your own case studies, develop a point of view about your industry and publish it. The cost of thought leadership has never been lower. In the age of AI, the bottleneck isn't production, it is authenticity. Your specific Pakistani perspective, be proud of it. Your specific cultural intelligence, that is where the real value is. It is the only thing that the AI cannot generate. If you are in food, and I cannot stress this enough, the Pakistani restaurant chain that cracks the storytelling code will be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. We are sitting on one of the world's greatest undiscovered cuisines with a documented global appetite for it. The entire category is waiting to be branded. Someone in this room, or someone funded by someone in this room, should be doing for Pakistani food what Nobu and Zuma did for Japanese food, what Dishoom did for Indian food in London. I'm not sure if you guys have gone there or experienced that. But Dishoom, with only 12 locations, does almost 10 million pounds of revenue per location annually. They do 120 million pounds of revenue by just, again, 12 stores. Keep this in mind. And they were recently valued at 300 million pounds. And again, they are inherently driven by storytelling. If you are an investor, fund the brand builders, not just the coders. The highest return on investment in Pakistan's future is not just another outsourcing company. It is the first Pakistani company that charges a brand premium on a global scale. And for all of us, here is the deeper thing I want to leave you with. 63% of global consumers say they prefer buying from companies that stand for a purpose and reflect their values and belief. Purpose is now a commercial advantage. In Pakistan, the civilizational crossroad, the world's fifth largest nation, a country of 255 million people, 64% of whom are under 30, has a purpose story waiting to be told. It is a story about a people who will feed you before they know your name, a people who built civilizations at the junction of every empire that ever mattered, a people who, despite everything, still show up on an American stranger's YouTube channel and make him cry. That story does not need a government to tell it. It needs you. The old model was build a product, hide the origin, and compete on price. That model is dead and AI has buried it. The new model is build with pride, lead with story, and charge the premium that every foreign traveler has already told you that you deserve. $35 billion is not a fantasy. It is the invoice for a story we already own but haven't bothered to send. I came here today to ask you to send it. Thank you.
That was fantastic. We've actually got time for questions. Do you want to take a question?
Time after break. So right before us was Samar and Honor Bhai, and that was Anil. उन्होंने कहा कि हम तो दोस्त हैं और बचपन से जानते हैं एक दूसरे को. So it's a hard act to follow, but it's very similar. I mean, I've known Saad for also about 25 years now, and we did our undergrad, our masters together. So इस topic का नाम आज है Fireside with Saad Kodal. कुछ पता नहीं क्या होने वाला है. बंदा AI का है तो मैं क्या खुद figure out कर लो. He's like, कल रात से लगा है सवाल क्या होगा मैं क्या नहीं बताऊंगा मैं तुम्हें. And भाई अगर आप AI के बंदे हैं तो आप figure out खुद करें क्या सवाल हो सकते हैं यहाँ पे. लेकिन we just get right into it. So one of the things that Saad, I've seen in you is like even from the undergrad days you were able to pick the right area that school telecoms to start kiya. You found yaar computer architecture is what you should do. As an undergrad you took grad classes. You had this insight about what spaces were gonna like explode in the coming years. पर हम graduate हुए हमने सबने कहा यार Austin बड़ा अच्छा है हम Austin नहीं छोड़ेंगे. तुमने कहा नहीं भाई मैं जा रहा हूँ California. Because headquarters वहाँ पर है. And then you followed through with that. You joined NVIDIA. Mashallah, वहाँ पर you had a very accelerated track, I would say. And then all of a sudden you called me and like यार ये नहीं करना मैंने. मैंने कुछ और ही करना है AI करना है. ये क्या है भाई? So basically I've seen you as someone who's had this insight somehow, as a science, as art, I don't know, but you somehow, mashallah, have a way to figure out among all that noise that's happening around to kind of pinpoint on the problem and then execute it, mashallah. So let me lead with that background. What was this finding insight about Hippocratic AI?
Hey, so welcome everyone. Very honored to be here and share the stage with my great friend Tausif. So let's jump into Hippocratic, right? So it started about 3 years ago. When we started Hippocratic, ChatGPT had just come out. And right before this, I was leading AI research at NVIDIA. And the reason I was doing research, I'm not a PhD, I'm not really a researcher, but the reason I was there is because that's where the action was at, in AI at the time. And, the first time I used ChatGPT, and I was like, oh my God, this is it. I think now AI is ready for commercialization, right? And so at that moment, I knew this is the moment that I had been waiting for. And so I met my co-founders who were brainstorming kind of what to do, what we want to build in this AI space. And at the time, the conventional wisdom, there were two secrets that Hippocratic AI was kind of built on. Okay, so one, we said we're going to build in voice AI, right? I knew in my time at NVIDIA that once you're able to talk to machines in just normal English language, natural language, you just want to talk to them. You don't want to like chat. You don't want to type. It's just so much easier, so much more natural just to speak. And so we knew voice was going to be a dominant paradigm. And so we were very early to voice. In fact, we had, we were very blessed and lucky to have some very large, rounds raised. But, even our investors, some of them were very nervous, right? I remember one investor kind of pulled out his phone in the middle of the deck and he was like, look, I use my phone for everything except talking. And you guys sure you want to go build this like voice only? Because we had said we're not even going to build a chatbot. We're just going to go to voice. And, but there goes that based on like this conviction and this bet that, look, I think voice is going to be the dominant paradigm. And then our goal in healthcare was really to, we have many successful doctors in the audience. They'll tell you the goal in healthcare really is to impact patient outcomes. And we just didn't think you could do that by texting people, and we just can't build a deep relationship. And so we thought that the real value in AI was going to be able to do it through voice. You'll be able to build a deeper connection. You'll be able to really demonstrate empathy. And with that, the goal was to go eventually basically impact patient outcomes. But the benefit of that bet was that nobody else was working on it, right? And so when we started working on voice, we very quickly realized that the most important thing in building a voice application is latency. And so, when we would test our applications, if you add even 100 milliseconds of latency to a voice conversation, all the scores dropped. So people were like, oh, this agent is dumber, this agent is ruder, even though it's the same LLM model. And so that insight kind of led us to say, okay, look, we're going to really just optimize the pipeline. We're going to go build a super slick voice solution. So by the time, OpenAI came out with their voice model and everybody in the world was like, oh yeah, voice is the next thing, we had already had like a 6-month lead on everyone else. And so this is where we do a startup, you have to have these kind of unconventional, Peter Thiel calls them secrets, right? Some bet that you understand, that you're willing to make, that you get to invest in before everyone else, and then that sort of lead compounds. So that was one very big advantage that we had. The other sort of insight was that we're going to do autopilots, right? So at the time in healthcare, what was common was all these scribes or the ambient listening solutions. And the insight was, look, these models are 80% of the way there. Just put a human in the loop and let's just get it out into the market. But we knew that, the upside to having a co-pilot is very limiting. You're limited, by the number of pilots that you have. So we said, look, our goal with AI is to bring abundance to healthcare, right? And the only way to do that is that the AI can operate without humans in the loop. And so we set our goal very high. We went after that. The other popular tool at the time was like GitHub Copilot, right? So people were still auto-completing, your code base, but you still had sort of a programmer sitting on the terminal. And so we kind of went against conventional wisdom, but I would say a big reason for our success was that we basically built the right product, right? I mean, building Autopilot let us really unlock the true value of AI. And once we were able to go show that value, that compounded and we were able to build a great business.
Oh, that's great. Hey, you mentioned NVIDIA, and that's a big part of your story, right? I want to just go back a little. And so, what was it like working at NVIDIA? What other things did you learn at NVIDIA that you would, use or apply to make Hippocratic not fall in the pitfalls that you would have seen at NVIDIA?
Yeah, I think working at NVIDIA was just such a blessing in my career. I think it's a very, very special company. And in many ways, NVIDIA shouldn't even be around today, right? Its business model, building graphics accelerators, it should have been like that a long time ago. What always surprised me, I started out in hardware, right? So I built chips for a decade, then I went to AI research, and then I went to Hippocratic AI and built in healthcare. What was interesting to me is that, there were so many lessons that I learned in completely different disciplines and fields, and I was able to leverage them and use them. And then they constantly kept coming up. And so, a lot of the problems, even though they're completely different fields, actually have very similar kind of solutions. One of the most important lessons that I learned at NVIDIA, by the way, that really helped me at Hippocratic and kind of just even building the company was in NVIDIA, we were very much innovation driven. And so Jensen loved to talk about $0 billion markets, right? So Jensen hated competition. He was always saying, hey, let's go figure out a whole new market. He'd get super excited. NVIDIA would do a lot of the lead work. And even this is why NVIDIA as a company, this was just part of their core culture, right? They just love building new technologies. He loved it for us to kind of go and find problems that only we can solve. And so, and it turns out that's kind of hard, right? So there's like a certain culture and mindset that you need to be able to go do that. It requires just really strong first principles thinking, to be able to kind of navigate an entirely new space. There's nobody else to follow. Same thing with GPUs, by the way, right? GPUs are always number one. So it's a very different kind of a company if you're trying to be the competitor that's trying to catch up. So our goal was, how do we stay number one? And so we had this, as part of our culture, we had this concept of speed of light, where we would always measure ourselves against the absolute limit. And it turns out there was a deep insight in, if you think about things in terms of fundamental limits, it actually helps you kind of even figure out, well, what is the path to getting there? It actually gives you a little bit of a roadmap or some insight into, what may be possible. And so it was really the speed of light thinking that allowed me to really thrive at Hippocratic, right? Because this is a whole new field. Nobody has done anything. Nobody knew what was going to happen. Even the people building the models didn't know what was going to come. We certainly didn't know what was going to happen. And so I think when we were in the cutting edge of technology, when things are just really murky, you have to kind of go back and rely on first principles thinking. A lot of the speed of light thinking that I learned at NVIDIA was absolutely critical in kind of navigating and moving quickly and then really figuring out how to make sure you're going on the right track. How do you make sure that you're taking the right moves? So there's just a lot of benefit. Even though as there's a large company, I think there's a lot of lessons kind of translated over when we were building a startup from scratch.
Yeah, your speed of light units, I mean, this is like, we at Meta also, we do a lot of this, right? Move fast, break things, but breaking things and then, that's part of moving fast, right? Like in Aapne healthcare pakad li, where I think it's highly regulated in extreme compliances. So moving fast in a space where trust is at the core of it, right? How do you move fast, not break things?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that was, this is where I think I mean, every company, I think, has their own culture. And Hippocratic, our number one, cultural priority was we have to put patients first, right? Safety was first and foremost. And so the first thing that we did, by the way, when we started Hippocratic, was we said, hey, we're not going to use LLMs for any clinical decision making. They're just not ready. We're going to sort of go, work on tasks that are a little bit safer. So we kind of just eliminated a huge surface area of risk. But then even then, when you're talking to patients, it's very important that you don't misinform them, that you don't make any kind of structural mistakes. So the way that we solved it, actually, that was actually a big part of our innovation. We created so basically nobody knew what was even possible to build with agents, and they certainly didn't know how we know that these agents are working. So we said, look, here's what we're going to do. We're going to just get 1,000 experts in the field, nurses and doctors, and we'll have them talk to our model. And if they think it's ready and safe to talk to patients, that's how we'll know. And so we didn't have a benchmark or a number. We just said, look, we'll just have the experts talk to it and they'll figure it out. So we created a gig app, a platform where we onboarded 8,000 US licensed registered nurses. They talked to our model, they pretended to be a patient, and they basically wrote down every single mistake that they made. And we would just put that up on a portal, and we would just iterate using the feedback that they would give us. And, we just kept doing this until our safety score was better than humans. And so, it's just really, so I do think it is possible to kind of move fast in a responsible way. You just have to kind of be very creative and think through, how am I going to evaluate it? And when you don't know, sometimes, people kind of in our field spend a lot of time trying to construct the perfect benchmark and synthetic. What I found is that, you just code end to end, go have the experts go talk to it, and they'll tell you what the answers are. And then it becomes very clear when something is safe. And then, of course, there's a lot of processes and systems that you can put into place. And then, going back to kind of things that I learned at NVIDIA, one of the things that we had to do was we had to take this consumer grade graphics card and put it into a car for self-driving. But this chip, as you know, these were not designed for safety critical systems. So, one of the lessons that I learned when we tried to do that effort was you have to use redundancy, right? You basically have multiple systems, so you can't rely on any single system. And so, again, when we did Hippocratic, we're like, okay, well, how do we make this safe? We came up with the constellation architecture. We said, look, it's not going to be one model. It's going to be we actually ended up with 30. I think now we're up to 50 models. That is the idea that, look, we're just going to have a lot of them. They're all going to have their areas of expertise. They'll kind of back each other up. And that together gives us the level of safety and reliability that we needed. And that seemed to be, again, it was like a completely unrelated lesson, but, it's just kind of cool how different learnings from completely different products and completely different industries can be applied to new problems.
यार ये हर चीज स्पीड ऑफ लाइट पे चल रही है, इसने 5 मिनट का वो भी दे दिया हमें. मतलब to make that what kind of speed of light is going on here, but मैं थोड़ा और टाइम दे यार. Okay, look, so TK, we need to wrap up. So basically, okay, what do you think, is going to be the next AI company? Like when founders think about AI, right? What is it that they're missing? Because usually people are talking about AI, cost cutting, and jobs khatam ho jayenge. I think Samar bhai ko hi sawal aaya tha. But what is your view on, what are founders missing on what the next AI company is going to look like? And what's your version of, how to build that?
Yeah, that's, I think the short answer is nobody knows. So whoever comes and tells you, ko bhai ye ho jayega, and, itni jobs chali jayengi, nobody really knows, right? But what I'll tell you is, I think we're still very early. If you're a founder trying to build in this space, I think a lot of what we've seen with AI is like how it can like do something so much cheaper and faster than humans. I actually think the most uninteresting application of AI is cost savings, right? I think the really more powerful, more lasting impact of AI will actually be how it uncovers new product lines, how it uncovers new kinds of companies that weren't possible before. Right. So kind of, one analogy would be to look at when we did when the cloud revolution came, right? A lot of companies migrated to the cloud. They just took their on-prem compute and moved it to the cloud. But it wasn't until you had those cloud native companies that rethought their business model and said, hey, now that I have this kind of scalable compute, what can I offer that I couldn't offer before? And so I think the same thing will be true with AI. Is like once intelligence becomes commoditized and cheap, what can I do? And so one of the things that I've been doing, so, I stepped away from Hippocratic earlier this year. We were doing well. So I thought it was a good time for me to kind of step back and work on my next thing. So I've been thinking a lot about kind of what the next phase will be. And, one of the things that I spend a lot of time thinking about, or what excites me in companies that I'm trying to advise now, are companies that are basically picking a vertical and asking themselves, hey, what would the AI native version of this company look like? Right? What if I designed this whole company from the ground up? What should it look like given now that we have Opus 4.6, or actually 4.7 just came out yesterday? So I think that's really the big opportunity, is kind of going through that thought exercise and saying, what is a new kind of company? What would the operating model for this company look like? And tapping into that advantage that it would unlock.
Oh, that's good. All right. So, मैंने तो कहा था कि I didn't prepare any questions, but मैंने एक पूछा था. I asked my daughter, Sarah, कि यार, क्या पूछना चाहिए? उसने कहा कि पूछी what's next? मैंने कहा it's lunch. तो मैंने कहा नहीं, 7 चाचू से पूछो what's next in AI? So we'll just wrap it up with that. Like, what are your advice? There are a lot of parents who have younger kids trying to go to college, and I hope there's a lot of youth here as well. I know तुमने मुझे कहा कि यार, काश मैं सॉफ्टवेयर वाला बंदा होता तो मैं तुम्हारे साथ अभी स्टार्टअप कर रहा था. मैं सॉफ्टवेयर बंदा नहीं हूँ. But like, what do you advise for the next generation, who are beginning to go to college, and what should they be doing?
So I think this is a great time to be a young, college student or high school student. So I have, my son just started high school. So I'll just kind of share what advice I gave him, right? Look, at this point in your career, at this point in your life, the benefit that you have is that, with OpenClaw and all these models coming out, everybody's at the same kind of starting point. There's no advantage that somebody who's been in the industry for 10 years has. In fact, you have a bigger advantage over them because they have all these bad habits, right? Like I look at my senior software developers, right? They have this bad habit. They know how to write the code, right? As opposed to the AI native kid coming out of college, you've always grown up with, these AI tools. He's just more likely, he just has a different way of approaching and using these tools. So you actually have an advantage over the incumbents. By the same advantage I saw when I moved into AI research, there were PhD students that were reporting to me that were in my team that had spent 6 years doing a PhD, but they had done it on the wrong thing. The convolutional neurons that just came out last year. And so we were both on the same page. And in fact, the transformer was invented after I made that switch. So when you have these kind of platform shifts, it's actually a great equalizer. So it's a great time to be young because everybody's on the same starting point. You probably have an advantage because you're now in school. You have a lot more time and the right mindset to kind of jump in there and really get your hands dirty, get exposed to it. So if you're a young student right now, what I would say is go use OpenClaw, right? Go start figuring out what you can do, figure out what the limits are. People are figuring it out right now. Nobody knows what the answers here are. And I would go talk to your local businesses and figure out what problem you can solve with OpenClaw or with some of these models and sell them solution. You can literally, like, this is what happened, when the PCs were first coming out. People would grow a small business and be like, hey, I understand PCs, you don't understand this. Let me go figure out how I can help your business. So this will help you understand businesses really fast. This will help you learn how to sell. This will help you learn the technology. And so that's what I would do. Right now, there's such first there's like this, everybody's on the same page, and there's like this unlimited opportunity. Everybody right now is thinking about, hey, how should I be using AI in my business? And the honest answer is a lot of us don't know. And if you're young, I absolutely think you can kind of get in there and provide a lot of those answers. So that would be my advice. Just roll up your sleeves, get your hands dirty, go on X, right? There's just a lot of great tutorials out there, people teaching you kind of how to do it. It's very possible. You don't need a degree. You certainly don't need an advanced degree to go start using this. Anybody can do this. And so your greatest advantage is time. And basically, your ability to explore things without having any deadlines or any burdens right now.
Well, thank you. So I think that wraps it up. But thank you, Adil. या तो तुमने मेरी उम्र या मेरे कमर किसी का ख्याल लिहाज रखा है या तो इसलिए तुमने आज मारा नहीं अभी तक. But if you over time, you should leave. And if you want to have a comedy session with me and Saad, maybe it's after tonight.
Good morning, everyone. We're in America. Need some more energy in the move. You need a Pakistani accent for that, I think. I've got a British accent, so hopefully you guys will understand me. My name is Umar Majid, co-founder of Salonika Capital, and I'll be moderating your session tonight on private equity and venture capital. We've got a great panel today. We'll be discussing everything to do with private equity, how capital is deployed, what capital providers are looking for, and, a few other things. And we'll leave plenty of time at the end for questions. So let's dive right in. So perhaps the panelists can introduce themselves, what they do, and where they deploy capital very briefly. Rahim, do you want to start? You want to? Sure. Jazakallah khair, Omar.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. My name's Ibrahim Khan. I'm the co-founder of Curate Capital and IFG. In a nutshell, we help our community to level up financially. And we do that through financial education, but then we also have the investment arm that manages $225 billion. And we look to have investors like you and park that into investments like you as well in front of us through private credit, private equity, and venture capital.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Great to be here. Thanks, Umar. My name is Mustafa Azhar, director at Houlihan Lokey, which is one of the largest investment banks in the US with a market cap of about $11 billion. I specifically focus on valuations, working for private equity, venture capital, credit investors, helping them value their investments and help them understand how their valuations are evolving over time. I value almost hundreds of investments, private investments on a recurring basis for my clients. And as a result, have a pretty good pulse on what's happening in the market. And I'm looking to share that color with all of you in the audience.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Muhammad Ahmed. I am the founder and managing partner of Start Equity Ventures. We're located in DC and in California as well. Our main focus is really on the pre-seed and Series A, which is very early investment. We've already deployed investments into just about 13 companies, one of which is Replit here, and I think we have representation for Replit in the audience. We focus on 4 areas: healthcare, workforce, employee, enterprise, and consumer tech, all underpinned with AI, of course. We have strong conviction on the agentic AI side, and we're really bringing venture capital in this asset class in a more structured and unified capacity to our communities. And that's something that we pride ourselves on. We don't only just invest the capital, but we also sit beside each of the founders in our companies to help solve their problems in real time. So we employ something called a forward deployed partnership model. So it's not just invest and we forget, it's more invest and we get involved with the startups to leverage our 20 plus years of enterprise and technology experience, as well as our backgrounds in finance.
Thank you so much. Guess the first question is to Mustafa, probably. So we've seen valuations contract in the last few years. Several reasons for this. Interest rates have been rising, geopolitical tensions, not least started by a rather eccentric world leader based in this country. From your seat at Houlihan Lokey, what has changed over the last couple of years in terms of what deals were being funded 2 years ago that are no longer being funded?
And what are you looking for in today's macroeconomic climate?
Yeah, and that's an interesting question, right? With there's so much happening in the world in the last couple of years, we've seen interest rates come down from near 0% in the last 4 years, 5 years, to almost 5-6%. So the capital structures that were built for that interest rates weren't able to survive, and that's why we have seen a lot of valuation multiples compress. If you look at on the tech side, enterprise SaaS was trading at 25, 30 times revenue back in 21, 22, which is compressed to almost 6 times, 7 times of revenue, and even lower, especially after what happened with Claude CoSpace coming out back in January, February timeframe. So overall, the valuations have compressed, but I think what's happening is the deals are getting done. There's still a lot of appetite for transactions. There's still a lot of appetite for transactions, especially on the spectrum of companies that have a strong growth story. We heard Temporal, we heard Saad as well, Hippocratic, AI, all these companies are getting funded. So as long as you have a strong story about profitability, how you get there, growth at all costs doesn't work anymore. It used to work back 3-4 years ago, but not anymore. It's more about how you build your story, how you preserve your unit economics. And I think that's kind of what's getting more and more important. And I think to your second part of your question, what's happening right now is there's a lot of dispersion between valuation and expectations of buyers and sellers, and that's the biggest reason the deals are breaking through. People who are in the startup world are still expecting valuations like it is 21, 22, even though the market has changed, the world has changed. So there has to be some convergence around valuation. And you've seen that happen in the last, I would say, 2 or 3 quarters. But it's something that is what's causing a lot of deals to fall apart, is kind of valuation and where they're shaking out.
I would tend to agree. So we do a lot of transactions in England, Italy, and Germany, and there's definitely a gap in terms of valuation expectations. Mohammed, is it the same in the VC space? Are you seeing a correction in valuations as well?
So I would say in the VC space, you'll notice that when you look at the startups that we're coming across now, 3-4 years ago, when you were looking at companies that were focused on SaaS, evaluation, as you mentioned, were at the 30x, 40x revenue. Now with AI, I think a lot of the capital is converging to that. 80% of a lot of the VC funding is going towards AI. What we're seeing is valuations are on the rise. If they've got a product in the market, they're showing customers and they're showing that traction, valuations are increasing, right? So we are baking that into our models to ensure that those align with kind of what our exit trajectories are. But indeed, AI is attracting a lot of that capital.
Thank you. And Ibrahim, Sharia-Compliant space? I mean, I guess everyone is much more spiritual, so there's no gap in valuation expectations, perhaps.
I mean, even Donald Trump praises are well these days. So, it's gone all the way to the top. Possibly the second Muslim president after Barack Hussein Obama. I think maybe I'll comment on the Sharia-Compliant side, but I think the other interesting thread, I don't know if you guys are seeing it, is that there's almost like a blurring of lines between private credit, venture, and private equity. Because, some of the big venture players are raising huge funds because rather than rolling out the tech, they're saying, why don't we just buy these traditional companies and be that traditional company? So there's that kind of blend there. And then because of AI, we've previously, the software layer was a pure kind of layer that was, exponential kind of returns, or at least non-linear returns. But now with AI, it literally is like oil and gas, from an economics perspective. And so credit has suddenly come back into the picture. So that's one of the threads that we're seeing, where it's almost like all three things are suddenly kind of blurring. And now taking a step back and thinking about Sharia compliance and all of that, previously, Sharia compliance when it comes to venture capital was actually pretty easy. But now that is,
But in terms of valuation expectations, what are you seeing specifically in that space? Like, has the market cooled, or are there still, there's a lot of liquidity going around such that, people are having unrealistic expectations? Are transactions stats? Because I can say that from our perspective, as both an advisor and investor, we're seeing a lot of transactions where you have an advisor come and promise a 15x multiple, and 15 months later, 18 months later, they're still in the market. And they, have to really reevaluate, where they want to sell their company, if they want to sell their company.
yeah, I think that's fair. And I think part of it is, as I think you were saying, that there's this kind of misalignment between where the market is and where the company is. And part of it is because investors are now underwriting the risk in a different way. Like if you're seeing a company that is actually performing and behaving like a private equity company, a more traditional business, but they are trying to present themselves as a venture business, then you're going to have some kind of disjunct, right? You're going to have an issue with that. But that's what we're seeing.
Cool. Mohammed, in terms of early stage VC, so we've just launched a VC fund, very different to private equity, different risk profile. You could argue it's more of a people bet than a business bet. How do you back early stage companies? Is it focused on backing the founder, or are there any other things that you take into account? Like, what's your thought process there? And I want you to kind of bring out like the difference between VC and private equity.
Absolutely. So I think if you take a look at where venture investing was 5 years ago, a PowerPoint deck, right, and a pitch can get you a term sheet. Now you need to have a product in the market. You need to show that you've got that traction. You need to show that you're attracting investors as well. So when we look at how we invest, kind of our due diligence, we are looking at, is this founder the right founder for the market, for the timing, right? And for the problem that they're solving. If we look at a company that we invested in, Sully, a health tech company, that founder had a lived experience with healthcare in the US, right? They had a close relative, a parent, one of their parents, had an issue with, had a chronic health issue, and they went through the healthcare system here in the U.S. That experience, they had multiple exits in the past. That experience gave them that drive to go and solve this problem. They just raised $20 million on a $200 million valuation, right? Earlier this year. So the founders that we're looking for, do they have the right product? Are they the right people? Are they coachable? And are they quick to learn, right? Case in point, Sully did do a pivot. They went from where in the past you had a very subscription-based seats and when we talk about in the SaaS world, in the past, it used to be you pay for a license, you pay for seats. They transitioned, they actually moved away from that and into an outcome-based, based on their agentic AI platform, to an outcome-based revenue model, which charges their customers. They create that revenue based on the outcome from the outcomes that they generate for their customers. And I think that's a major shift. Where in the past, these pricing models were focused on that. Now they're moving towards a more outcome-based model. So it's a lot more focused on the founder, but also now we're able to see early signs of traction from the products that they're building with a lot more capital efficiency than in the past.
Interesting. Thank you. I guess, Mustafa, from a private equity perspective, you're still kind of due diligencing management teams, track record, et cetera, or has that kind of changed of late?
No, that's actually becoming increasingly important, and kind of building on what Mohammed said. I think the flexibility for a founder is extremely important in these times because everything is so in flux. It's just changing. So, having that flexibility is extremely important, and pivoting from, for example, growth at all costs to profitability is an important pivot for a founder. And sometimes it's difficult for them to understand that. So having that flexibility is important. And I think the other important thing is how marketable the founder is. and Mohammed was saying, raising capital, that's probably one of the more important things that, you ask any founder in this room, it's probably one of the more important things given overall the dry liquidity in the markets. So being able to raise capital and provide runway for the business, and if you're not able to do that, the ability to preserve cash flow, whether it's use of technology, whether it's use of AI, I think those are some of the more important things for founders when we look at different businesses in the private side.
Cool, thanks. Ibrahim, Curate is explicitly Sharia-compliant. So no leverage, no conventional preferred equity, no interest-bearing debt. I guess my question is that traditional private equity create alpha through those three tools. They get their 20% IRR, et cetera, and now they're struggling. How do you compete with traditional private equity? And are you competing on an IRR perspective, or are you competing on other metrics?
Yeah, it's a great question. So ultimately, where we look to fit in is a little bit below the kind of larger private equity players. And when you come in at that level, there's a lot of growth that can be unlocked that doesn't necessarily need financial, engineering or arbitrage. It's literally you're focused on the growth story of the business. Having said that, there are a toolkit of credit or Sharia-compliant credit opportunities that we can layer on top. So, with our pharmacy business, so we own.
Just a quick question on that: are you just replicating a traditional, interest-bearing product, or is that something that is, actually with the spirit of the law of Sharia?
Absolutely. So with the pharmacy business, for example, the bit where we have seen the opportunity to leverage is by having a Sharia-compliant receivables finance. Now, a traditional receivables finance, if there is a deficiency in the payback, they would actually have security over the asset themselves, and they will be able to enforce on that. This difference that we have is we are partners in that receivable finance. So if there's a delay in the payment, then we have to take a hit on the delay as well. Or if there's a deficiency in the principal payment, then we would have risk there. Now, we take that step because if you're taking a little bit more risk, you have to be particularly careful. And in this case, the counterparty is the UK government, the National Health Service. So that takes a lot of the risk out of that, and it gets us comfortable doing that. Because if the NHS went under, I think we're going to have a big problem.
I mean, I wouldn't think it's a bad thing if we maybe partially privatize healthcare in the UK. But I guess what I want to press you on more is the, allocation of capital is pretty competitive. Private equity use all of these different metrics. So, preferred equity at 8%, a coupon annually. They'll leverage the business. They will, do other things as well. And that generates an IRR of 20% and above. So when you're competing against that, I mean, surely the Sharia-compliant credit facility for invoice financing is going to replicate that sort of a return profile, is it?
So we aim for the same return profile. So we aim for 18% IRRs as well. But you're right, you have to pick the right industries where you can actually compete. So in the pharmacy context, because 90% of the revenues actually do come from the NHS, there's actually a large amount of finance that's needed there. And in addition to that, there's a lot of expenditure that goes on robots. So pretty heavy scale asset finance. And so in the Sharia-compliant world, whenever you're dealing with some kind of asset, particularly a hard asset, that makes it a lot easier to be able to do financing. So for example, if we were to do a software company, that would be not impossible, but it would be a lot more complicated for us to be able to do that.
I think you all mentioned different types of capital, so venture debt, venture capital, or venture equity, et cetera, et cetera. Do all of you want to kind of give a brief overview of some of the different capital stacks that are out there and which ones you prefer in the companies you invest into and why? So perhaps, Mustafa, you can start.
Sure. So I think if you look at from a early stage VC perspective, one of the instruments that's used pretty oftenly it's called a safe note or a convertible note. And with that, what happens is you're not valuing the company because it's such an early stage company that you don't know how to value that company. So what you do is you say, I'm going to give you the money, but whenever you raise money in the next round, I'm going to convert at an X% discount. It's usually 20%, 25, 30%, depending on what the negotiation is. And that instrument is just becoming increasingly popular because, again, like you don't have to value the company, especially in these times when things are changing so much and it's difficult to value early stage companies. It just gives a way out for both the company and the investor to instead build the company, use the funds to build the company, and then once they're at a stage where they can raise money, that's when they can convert into equity.
Now, I just echo what Mustafa said. Yeah, there are various notes and tools in order to invest capital at early stages. But what I will say is that we're not structurally Sharia-compliant for start equity ourselves. However, there's no tension between the principle-based and value-based investment approach that we have and the Sharia-compliant or halal business approach.
Flesh that out a bit more.
Yeah. So when we make an investment, we're making investments early enough where it's all cash, right? And so while the safe notes gives you like an ability to secure a conversion at the time when they do a priced round, which just means they actually issue a specific price for the share when they get that term sheet from a VC that's going to write a larger check size. So for us, that fits within the boundaries, right, of Sharia compliance. We are intending to go towards the Sharia-compliant model eventually at some point, but there's a lot of overhead that needs to be incurred.
And it's just to interject, actually, there's an interesting point. I find it quite interesting. Other people might find it boring, but you can ask your questions afterwards. How do you define Sharia compliance? Like, because yesterday we were talking about robotics, and the second and third order unintended effects of that could be mass unemployment. So would that come under your purview of Sharia compliance? Because for me, that maybe some things that technically could be Sharia compliant and fit within the word of the law, but maybe not so much in the spirit. So do you guys, and Ibrahim as well, do you guys look at these second, third, fourth order effects? Like I don't think Muslims, for example, would have invented Snapchat. Right? Maybe I'm wrong.
It's a very interesting question.
I think it's a question that's been left to me. I think it's you need to have that moral component, right? I think there's the gating items where it needs to be, fundamentally, permissible and Sharia compliant. But then you do think about these things. So, for example, when it comes to, let's say the pharmacy business, we do think about where are we buying those drugs from? And large drug manufacturers coming out of Israel, for example, we are very deliberate in whether or not we want to buy from them. We obviously don't buy from them.
What about from India?
We buy from India. Yeah, we buy from India. So any Indians in there? Mohsin, my co-founder, is an Indian, so
Commercial though, no? It's true.
But I think the second and third order, effects that you're talking about on the AI front, if I'm honest, I don't think we all think about it, but because it's very hard to predict this stuff, I don't think you can necessarily underwrite, particularly from a Sharia compliance perspective, on things that there is reasonable disagreement over, because that's not necessarily something that you can hang your hat on.
Oh, fantastic. No, that's quite nuanced. So I think we'll wrap up. So closing statement, and then people can ask questions. So just one sector that you guys, each of you, are interested in, are positive on, and why?
I can start. So AI, that's kind of the big theme that we've been hearing about. But From an AI perspective, I think what we're seeing from LLMs, whether it's Anthropic, whether it's OpenAI, whether it's Gemini, I think that the biggest limiting factor is power. And I think that's where, in my opinion, in the next 5 years, we'll see a lot of investment coming in, whether it's new technologies within power, whether it's hydrogen, whether it's nuclear, whether it's battery storage. Just for some context, in 2025, China added 500 gigawatts of power. US added 50 gigawatts of power. So that's the biggest limiting factor in terms of getting compute for a lot of these companies. And we don't know who's going to win the AI race, but one thing that we can say for definite is that is whoever cracks the power code is going to make a lot of money in the next 5 years.
I would say for us, it's really we're big on the enterprise and the consumer tech. Infrastructure layer is what's key, right? So we're seeing a move away from the AI as a chat bot where you are actually instigating the AI to respond, and more towards infrastructure. And that's where the big move is, where you go vertical industry focused AI, agentic AI platforms that go deep and collect data to create that moat in order to secure their position in that market. And so that's where most of the focus is, building that infrastructure layer and investing in those kind of companies.
You can't say pharmacies.
I'm not going to say pharmacy. So for me, I think there's two really interesting areas. One is engineering, heavy engineering and manufacture. I think that's a really fascinating area, particularly in Europe now, because of the, I guess, increasing divorce that we're seeing from the USA and a lot of the money that used to come in from the defense spend perspective. So that's on the rise, and particularly now because nation states are fragmenting and becoming isolated kind of, islands on their own, a lot of that manufacture is coming back. And then I think the second interesting area is highly relationship-driven businesses that are not transactional, they're very relationship-driven. I think they are going to go onto steroids with the rise of AI. A lot of the support that used to go in behind those businesses, I think they're going to get, that's going to become highly efficient, and the value that those relationships are going to hold, I think, are going to increase. Perhaps businesses like yours.
Thanks for that. I would agree with both of those. Any questions or?
First off, thank you. All right, we've got a question right here. We've got time for 2 quick questions.
So thanks for the panel here. First, I was disappointed that 2 of you went with AI. That's a given, and you have to come up with something new in terms of what you're looking forward to. But the question is, with all the VC and private equity and pretty much the world focused on AI, is there a reason of concern that other non-AI related ventures, things like Dr. Azra's medical fields, are they going to get starved over the next 5 to 8 years before we realize they're getting starved and start getting back to them? Because the world has to be a little bit more than technology and AI. It just can't be that that's the only place where we need to focus on, right? But it seems like at this point that's where the world is focused on. So what's going to happen to the other pieces? By the way, I'm part of technology group as well. I'm not a medical student or doctor or anyone, but I just see that there's a little bit too much focus on something.
I could say a couple of things. I think it just depends where you are in the world. I think in the UK and Europe, like non-AI businesses are, still getting funded. To Ibrahim's point, in terms of advanced manufacturing, there's a massive indigenization of value chains and supply chains in Europe and the UK. So I don't think it's just, AI that's getting funded. I was in the Bay Area last week and everyone was just talking about AI. But I think it does depend where you are. These guys would know more than I would, but I do think AI valuations will probably compress. Mohammed, we were talking about it yesterday. Maybe you can add some further color onto that.
I agree. There's a major focus on AI, and that's like any infrastructure that we've seen in the past. In the 2000s, there was the internet, right? And during that time, it was building infrastructure, right? Laying subsea cables and fiber optics was the major push. Then came the internet, right? Then came the SaaS products. Everyone's out there trying to build some form of SaaS, and that's what the big talk was about, right? Building that layer. Now the push is on the AI layer to build that infrastructure. So you reach a point where you're no longer having to interact with your systems in the way you did in the past, right? In a traditional way. Now it's more of interaction. So we just invested in a company called Crow. And what they're doing, they're abstracting the SaaS platforms into an AI that you interact with the AI with that chatbot, and it goes and does what you need in your platform. So if you, instead of going and tapping into your databases, you're actually questioning your AI to go ask about, hey, how is my market doing? How is my salesperson doing in this market? What is my recent forecasts? Which products are doing well? Where am I seeing losses in the business in terms of cost leakages? So you're no longer having to go in and look for those, using your traditional ways. It's actually interacting with the AI that provides that abstraction.
Yeah, and just one thing, if I can add, so what we're talking about was more on the VC perspective, right? And VC is mostly technology investing. So that's where AI is coming in. But if you think about industrial, that's also having its moment. A lot of private equity firms, you might have heard, are investing into HVAC companies, industrial companies, pest services. So that industry is also having its own moment. And then what Ibrahim was saying was, our private equity firms are going into these traditional businesses and then thinking about how they can automate them and improve their valuations.
Well, no quick question. Assalamualaikum. So my question was slightly different. My question, especially for a private equity firm and for a venture capital, is how do you perceive angel investors? And what is your advice, or what would be your advice to angel investors?
How do we perceive angel investors?
Yes.
Very good question.
Your arch nemesis, or chasing up too much equity before you get involved, or
Angel investors should invest into VC funds, maybe.
Yeah, so from angel investors are the ones who are writing the first check, right? That's the friends and families, right? And the fools, the triple Fs. So I think there's always a place for that, right? But what I would say is you have to be mindful of where you're putting your money and the diligence that goes into that. One of the things that we focus on is making sure that when we're investing in people that align with our integrity, right? Trust, their honesty around the valuations. We've come across companies that have told us astronomical valuations in the billions with no product, just a POC and no revenue, right? So I think there is an aspect there where this is a highly risky asset class. You need to be mindful where you're putting your money, and you need to make sure you have the right support system, right? So that's why we employ an advisory board of industry experts, SMEs, in this space, right? In any one of the spaces that we invest in, we have SMEs embedded in that, right? And we also apply them into the companies that we invest in as advisors, to ensure that our money is is safe and secure. As an angel investor, you don't have that network. That's the challenge, I would say. It's good to get yourself into that and dabble a bit, but just be mindful that it's going to be a learning curve.
Yeah, it's just like playing a lottery, right? Because VCs have a 20% hit rate. I would say angels would have even lower than that. So it's just at that point you can go to Vegas.
Thank you. What a great panel. Fantastic. Thank you, gentlemen.
All four of these panelists and the person who's going to interview them or ask questions, they all are very close friends. I'm not going to waste too much time introducing them, so to speak, because they have been introduced a few times already, and most of you guys know them. But I'm going to just tell you a little bit personal background because I know them so well. First of all, let me tell you, there are two physicians here and two non-physicians in this panel. And out of the two physicians, one is a active practicing physician, and the other one has done a lot more than just being a physician. So Dr. Amjad Saqib is my class fellow from King Edward Medical College. I'm not going to give you the exact date because that will tell us our age and stuff. So we have done medical school together, but then afterwards he
became the CEO and founder of Akhuwa. You already heard the story about the impact that has created. It has, I think, given so far $1.7 billion to 4 million plus families in Pakistan. So he is the pride of our class, pride of the whole Pakistan, in fact. And next, I will talk about my other physician friend here, Dr. Baba Rao. I cannot tell you that how excited and happy I am today, because 5 years ago when I joined Open, and at that time I wanted to bring the Open and Apna on the same platform together, and to see them on the same platform, it is such a heartwarming feeling, because both organizations, they can do a lot together, and I can foresee there will be more opportunities coming our way. So Dr. Baba Rao, so nice of you to come. And by the way, Dr. Baba Rao is current president of Apna. So just to see how much respect we gave him, so we had to delay the program just because he was stuck in the traffic. So nice to have you here, sir. Then the next one, not doctor anymore. So we have current Open Global President, good friend of mine. It has been a pleasure to work with Tariq Khan. For some time, we did the last year's retreat together in DC, and then of course this one. You all will hear his comments and ideas as well. And I'm not sure how many of you know our the Abu Bakr Saab. Abu Bakr was the former president of Open. And we did our retreat in New York together. It went so very well that he was immediately promoted to be the CEO of Pakistan Software Export Board. So we lost him, so I'm glad that he is back. But thank you so very much for listening. We have a great panel here. I would just let Abu Bakr take from here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Saab. That was such a nice introduction. Let's start with this. I think you've already done the introduction. I want you to do the next slide if you can. Let's start with a little bit of an icebreaker. And let's get people back into the mode. I know the lunch was so good that maybe people may be feeling, oh, this. Can you get to the next slide, Marvin? I want to ask people if we can get that slide up. That will be great. But in the meantime, I'm so honored and privileged to be sitting here with these three. I think that's probably one of the most accomplished Pakistanis that I can think of. They all inspire me. I know Tariq for a very, very long time, but I also know Dr. Saab. I'm with Saab for a good 5 to 6 years, and we will talk about his impact, what he has created. And I have the opportunity to meet Dr. Rao now, who's doing some amazing stuff, and they all have great responsibilities. So now the slide is up. So how many of you recognize this slide? And I will literally ask you, do you know what this slide is? And how many of you were there and saw that and when that happened? All right. Literally, I think it would be good. If you can just stand up the people who actually witnessed this thing. On TV, yes. Good. I think I was one of them too. And let me tell you, congratulations. Today, April 18th, 40 years ago, that thing happened. So you're officially senior members of our community because you're at least 40 years old. All of you that stand up. I think at least 40, if not 50 plus. Because that one thing, that one delivery, that one shot changed the history of cricket for so long. And the reason why I brought this up, not just because to make you an honorary senior citizens of Open, but also for other reason is I see a lot of similarities of what happened on April 18th, 40 years ago, to what's happening today. I think what's happening in the geopolitics right now, I think Tausif Ahmed has already done the signal. We are about to hit a shot that would change the geopolitics of the world. And I think we should cross our fingers to say, if we can broker this peace that was happening in this world, We have done something for this world that has not been done, and I think we should be all very proud of it. So many people that I've spoken to in the last 24 hours says we have, and they've been here for 30, 40, 50 years, we have not been more prouder to call ourselves Pakistani American than it is today. So let's hope the momentum continues and let's move on to the topic. There you can go back to the slide. So let's do a little bit of a introduction first, and I would love to start with Dr. Amjad Saqib. Please, if you can give a little bit of an introduction of yourself and Akhuwat, so everybody understands where we are, and then we can go into the discussion.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you very much, Abu Bakr. And I would also like to mention Rukhsana Abu Bakr. Thank you very much, Bahan. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Amjad Saqib. By education, I'm a medical graduate, but then I switched over to Civil Service of Pakistan, and I did my master's in international development from American University. Later on, I worked some time for the government, but ultimately I realized that working in government is being subservient to rules and regulations. So there is very little scope for innovation and creativity. So we decided to found an organization, directly interacting with the poor people of Pakistan. The objective was providing financial inclusion, because people in Pakistan are trustworthy, creditworthy, debt-worthy, extremely diligent. Only thing they lack is access to capital. So we created a fund and then started giving small amounts of loans to the poor people. And the most important thing was that these loans were interest-free. Qarz Hasan. Yes, aap apne bhai ko dete hain, ya apni behan ko dete hain. So, Akhuwat was founded, it is 25 years, and it is probably the only not-for-profit charity organization which has helped build 4 million businesses.
So I'm extremely delighted and honored that I'm in the company of the best people, the entrepreneurs who add value to life. But with all humility, I say that though I'm not an economic entrepreneur, but I am a social entrepreneur trying to build the lives of many people. So we have so far disbursed $1.7 billion US, and this is the investment in the economy of Pakistan, and as a result, more than 6 billion, money, the worth has been created. So this all money which we give, this has been equitably distributed amongst all our borrowers, which number I also mentioned, around 4 million families. The last thing, Abu Bakr, I would like to say, that this is not the story of financial intermediation. This is not the story of creating a cadre of entrepreneurs. This is the story of hope, optimism, and resilience. Whenever I tell the people, whether in Oxford, Harvard, or wherever, that by distributing $1.7 billion US, it's not a very big thing. But the most important thing is that our recovery percentage of these non-collateralized loans is 99.9%. That is to Pakistan. That is real face of Pakistan. Now the last thing, whenever we give loan to these people to start a small business, we tell them that, look, today you are taker of a loan, but in you, we see a giver. So once you come out of poverty, then you must give to somebody else, because we want to create a virtuous cycle. And you will again be, thrilled and delighted to know that 60% of our poor borrowers, they have become our donors. So this is a great achievement in the sense that we are creating people, inspiring them to reciprocate and build a better society. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Saab. Amazing, inspiring. Let's go to Dr. Baba Saab, President of Apna, probably one of the largest Pakistani organized professional organizations. So love to hear from you and your introduction in our class.
थैंक यू सो रात को मैंने अपनी एक फोटो पोस्ट कर दी जो अमजद साहब के साथ थी
तो मेरे एक दोस्त है वैस मसूद जज्मी, उसने कहा तू उधर क्या कर रहा, वो तो बड़े मशहूर आदमी है. तो anyway, so I am president of APNA, which stands for Association of Pakistani Physicians in North America. It's about 49 years ago that we started this organization, and now we have about 5,000 paid members, and our outreach is about 23,000 Pakistani doctors in America and Canada. And the way it works is we have committees. We have 33 committees, starting from education to philanthropy to so on and so advocacy and so on. And then we have about 51 alumni and chapters in United States, in various states. So we all basically, that's how the structure works. And what we do is usually education and philanthropy. They're very simple. So first part is any student or doctor who wants to become a medical doctor, we guide them. If they're already doctors, but in America or outside America, and they're trying to get into residencies, we guide them like our, children or babies, and make sure everybody gets visa. So last year we had about 1,064 doctors from Pakistan come to state to do residencies. This year now we're working already because of visa issues. Our advocacy committee and us, we are working. We have about 1,000 doctors which we'll bring in. So really the number one job is we got here, somebody helped us. Now how do we make sure everybody else gets here who's capable and qualified? So that's the education part. Then if you take education back, we have these committees called Merit and a Young Physician Committee and other committees, which are then helping back home and giving as much courses and lectures that they can do to various medical schools in Pakistan. Other than that, obviously, we have a big social wing, which not as big as obviously a Huat, but we have our own projects in Pakistan, mostly at medical school, at alumni level. They're like from Run Center to girls' school to all that project there, and then clinics and so on. This year, my aim is, some of my friends there from Open are here. Collective aim is really how do we change this affluence into influence? Meaning, we all are doing well at our level. We want to make sure that we basically let people know here in North America that we are doing this so that we are even more known, and then we can do these things better. So that's the theme. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. The impact obviously Apna is creating is unbelievable. I'm not that smart to join Apna, so I joined Open. So that was the next best option I had for me. So let's go to Tariq Khan, who's a dear friend and a mentor for 20 plus years for NISA. Please go ahead.
Thank you. It's a great privilege to have so many honorable people on the stage, and especially Dr. Amjad Saqib and Dr. Babar Rao coming, and having our own Abu Bakr, who's a success story at Open, be here. But I'll share a quick 2-minute story that how my journey into nonprofit world started. 22 years ago, I was in corporate America working for a company, and one of the recruiters came to me and said, you have a very powerful resume, but you don't have any nonprofit company on your resume. And I was in my 30s, and I said, my nonprofit is only my bank account. I have no interest in nonprofit company. He said, no, it looks good on a resume. So I said, okay, fine. So we joined and started actually a nonprofit called APIS Scholars. And we were in corporate companies, so all of us, 4 companies gave 100,000 companies money, not our money. Then let's create a scholarship for Asian American. There was something for United Degree College Fund for blacks, Hispanic scholarship for Hispanics, but there was no organization for Asian children. And today, 22 years later, I'm admitting it was a very selfish motive. I just got involved in a nonprofit organization. I served their board for 10 years, but what changed my life was 7 years later after starting that organization. I was sitting at a gala like this, much bigger, 1,000 people in the room, and we had president of Coca-Cola, McDonald's sitting everyone in, and it was in Hilton, New York. One young girl came to me and said, Mr. Khan, can I hug you? I said, sure. She gave me a very tight hug. I thought maybe a daughter of a friend. I said, do I know you? She said, no, you don't know me, but you changed my life. I said, my children don't say that, but what have I done? She said, I am from Fremont, California. I belong from a Sikh family. My parents migrated from India. And when I was young, I always wanted to go to a good university or school, but we didn't have a lot of money.
And my parents discouraged me that don't focus too much on that because you're going to get married when you turn 20. And when I was in high school, I used to think about if I can go to good college. I could never talk to my father. He was very strict. But my mother can talk to me, but she said, don't even think about it. In our families, we don't have money for education and all that. She said, I used to worry about it. And one day I found there is a scholarship. So when I looked at the scholarship, and this was many years ago, they only accepted paper application. So I filled up the application and I sent the application. And then a week later, I called them up and they told me that my application was late by 3 days. So she said that right then and there, my dreams shattered and I cried all night. And when I woke up in the morning, I was going back to my regular life and I looked at a website and you were the only person on the board who looked like me or my family. I said, what happened, man? She said, I got your number from the scholarship office and I called your office. And when I called your office, you talked to me only for 30 seconds. I told you a problem is, and you said, I'm in a rush, but give me your name and number. And then you hung up the phone. And I said, what happened? She said, a week later, I got a call from the scholarship office and they said, our board member has recommended your name and we'll look at your application. I said, then? She said, I just want you to know that last year I graduated from Harvard, now I'm attending Columbia, and everything is paid by this. And all of a sudden, my dry eye became wet. And I said, really? What about the parents? And she said, they're sitting in the room and they're the proudest parent. Sometimes unintentionally, you can make a difference. At Open as an organization, it's very difficult, a lot of work our teams are doing. But when you think about, Farooq Usman is sitting somewhere in the room, he's a success story. We're creating success stories. In this country or anywhere, one very important thing that I would want to end with is that people, how many of you have children who are born around year 2000 or later? So all your children, I don't want to scare you, those who are born year 2000, they will be in workforce till 2065. Okay? Right now there are 200 humanoids working. In next 10 to 15 years, there will be about billion humanoids. So they will have to work with non-humans. And unfortunately, your great-grandchildren may have relationships with them. So our world is changing very quickly. Technology is taking control, and we need guidance and mentorship from organizations like Open. How do we prepare our next generation for the workforce?
Well, very well said. And I think that just gets into the real meat of it. And I'll just make this question twofold. And I would like each one of you to please spend a few minutes on it. I think, as we said, our biggest asset is our next generation is what we do. How, as three powerful organizations that are out there that have their own unique strengths and impact that they're creating, how are we preparing our next generation? What is our organization doing to prepare them for prepare our next generation? And also add to it is like, not for today, but what are we doing and what can we tell them and what we can advise them to be ready for the next generation, for the next future that is coming, which is different and evolving. How do we make sure that we get our seat on the table, not for today, for more long-term permanently?
Yeah, as I told you, the primary focus in front of Akhawat is providing financial inclusion to the poorest of the poor so that they can come, move ahead in their life. One day I was sitting in the office, a guest from United States came to me and he said that you have done a wonderful thing, a great organization, you and your friends, but what is your succession plan? How will this continue? What will happen in the future? So that was a very critical moment. We thought that let's start a university. And university with a difference. We give loans without interest. We will give education without fee. We give loan and the people pay it after 2 years, and we will educate the students and tell them that go to the classroom, but pay your fee after 10 years. So that is how we started this university, and only the last month we have bought the charter from the government of Pakistan. And this is the place where we can think of the future generation. We're not focusing on just providing them education. We are focusing on their training. We are transferring our vision, the vision of reciprocity, the vision of giving, the vision of developing a compassionate world, the vision of providing equal opportunities irrespective of caste, color, and creed. So not only with their interaction with the machines, but their interaction and love with the human beings as well. We are here trying to create the best version of a human being. If you allow me, there is a famous verse of Ghalib. बस की मुश्किल है हर एक काम का आसान होना, आदमी को भी मैसर नहीं इंसान होना. यानी आदमी और इंसान में बहुत फर्क है, आदमियत और इंसानियत में बहुत फर्क है. तो खाता पीता आदमी तो वो सब देखते हैं, बट इंसान वो है जिसका सीने में दिल धड़कता है. तो जैसे डॉक्टर साहब ने दर्दमंदी का कल भी इजहार किया कि फ्यूचर इंटेलिजेंस, तो दैट्स द अल्टीमेट ऑब्जेक्टिव इन फ्रंट ऑफ अस कि हम लोगों को तारीख भी पढ़ाएं, सोशियोलॉजी भी पढ़ाएं, फेथ के बारे में भी बताएं, और ये भी बताएं कि खुशियां सिर्फ हमारी नहीं हैं, ये उस वक्त तक नामुकम्मल हैं जब तक कि हमारा हमसाया भी खुश नहीं है. सो दिस इज हाउ वी वुड लाइक टू create the best version of a human being. Beautiful. Telling them their history and their this innate desire to build a better life.
Thank you. Very, very well said. Moving on, just so Dr. Saab, आप बताएं अपना organization, massive. How is we preparing the next generation?
So more specifically, because your question, like how we preparing our future generation. So we started initially as like a social get-together. Many years ago, we'll meet friends and have fun and have good food and music. Then we slowly converted toward philanthropy, now education, and now we are focusing on the future. What can we do? So particularly, we are now launching task forces and committees in reference to that. For example, this year, I think Adil is here somewhere in the crowd. We started a new task force called Early Career Physicians Counseling. So doctors who are graduating from trainings today, what can they do? They want to go to private practice versus academia versus industry versus research. So we have a council for that. Then kids of our families who wants to go to medical school, we have a task for that called MedConnect. So they are people who are applying for medical school and people who just got into medical school. They are guiding them with some deans in part of that. And then we started, not as good as open maybe, but we have a new task force on healthcare innovations. So we want to be in sync with the rest of the world in America so that whatever is happening in healthcare field, we are also doing that. So there are these specific programs we are launching, but obviously the most important thing is we somehow convince people to be good human beings. First of all, we have to be good human beings, and we are producing people like Mandan in New York, so I'll stop there.
Thank you. Tariq, please.
So I think Dr. Saad is doing wonderful work, and plus Akhuwat University is a great concept. जब बच्चा ग्रेजुएट हो तो वी आर अ करियर लाइफ साइकिल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, वो आप हमें दे दें. सो वी वांट टू मेक श्योर कि वी क्रिएट मोर एंटरप्रेन्योर्स एंड प्रोफेशनल. जो हेल्थ केयर में जाना चाह रहे हो, हम डॉक्टर साहब के साथ हाउ वी विल वर्क टुगेदर इन दैट सेंस. मगर आप सब अपने आप से ये सवाल करेंगे अपने बच्चों के अलावा या अपनी फैमिली के अलावा, इज देयर समबडी दैट यू हैव मेड अ डिफरेंस इन हिज और हर लाइफ? एंड इफ द आंसर इज नो, यू हैव टू चेक दैट बॉक्स बिफोर यू लीव दिस वर्ल्ड. Open is committed to create 100 or maybe thousands of entrepreneurs in future and professionals. The moment your child or someone that you know graduates, we are a career life cycle organization from that time till they want to watch cricket full time. We will take that responsibility. It is very important for us to have that pipeline जो हमारी next generation है उनको हम entrepreneurs में convert करें, and open with global chapters and growing organization will continue to do that. But it's important that we get everyone's, whoever is not an open member, please make sure that you become part of member. It's less about you. We are all financially successful. At least 3 of them are. So, rest of us, we are committed to do it for our next generation.
Thank you so much. I'll just end with this thing. And I'm all about impact. So it's 4 million families out of poverty. 23,000 doctors, and you know how doctors are, and they are usually one doctor, if they support 10 other families and 100 other families at times to open with $16 billion of exit, and they are doing phenomenal work on creating innovation and entrepreneurs. All of this circle back here, and this is a circle. And if we can believe in it, that whatever the wealth we are creating, whatever the entrepreneurs we are creating, if a part of it comes back and circle back to people like Dr. Saab, I think you have a very bright future. And to this note, I would like to end and thank you so much for your time. And thank you again. It is my honor
Just
to
one plug in, that open is the talent pipeline. Pakistan, PSAP, when they needed talent, we sent Abu. And in a year's time, he increased billions of dollars for Pakistan. And then he had to come back because of family commitment. And we replaced him with another open member who's now serving. So this is the power of the pipeline. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Mubi, can you make the announcement for our tech? Yes, absolutely. Before we...
All right, I'm just going to do a quick introduction of myself. I'm not one of the panelists, but as the moderator, I figure I'll just use this opportunity. So Cousins Burger, you see the logo under, it's not like the other ones. We're not a fintech company. We're not healthcare. We sling burgers, basically. But, we opened about 2 years ago. We have 11 locations. We're one of the fastest growing restaurants in Philadelphia. And we were recently featured on CNBC. And since then, we've had 140 people reach out to us from all around the world looking for locations. And it's been an incredible journey. And 98% of those people are Muslim. So it's a beautiful thing to see. People want in their community, they want a brand that they can root for, especially with everything going on in the road. So it's been incredible. My background is 24 years of IT, marketing, and technology. And so I get to leverage a lot of that when you guys speak about AI and everything that resonates. And so plan to use a lot of that when we're building this brand. So, all right. So now it's not about me. Now it's about these two. So I'm just going to do quick intros right now. Give me 1 second. Sorry, we have a change in lineup, so that's why I'm not done. All right. So first we have Dr. Adir Ahmed. He's a physician, entrepreneur, innovator, working across medicine, technology, and business. He's a dermatopathologist. Is that the right way to pronounce it? Again, and an assistant professor of oncology and the managing partner of Advantage Health, where he is involved in healthcare M&A, investments, and growth. He also co-founded companies using AI to improve diagnostics and serves on the board of Pakistan Stroke Initiative. All right. And then right next thing we have Ms. Dawi Dosa is the president of Premier Matrix Realty and a respected real estate professional with over 50 years of experience in the greater Toronto area. She's also known for her strong commitment to community and giving back. So let's start with that, right? So we heard you've recently made some donations. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. I have done very well in my life financially and otherwise with good kids and good family and everything. I've been very blessed. Looking at that, I always felt that I have to share with the others who need more help from me. So even when I had very little, if somebody liked my shawl, I would give it to them so that I feel that they would be happier with it than me. So that's the nature I came up with. Now, at the moment, my concentration is to give to Citizen Foundation, for which I'm also going to Houston in a couple of days for their event. And there I'm going to donate $500,000 US. And I also, about 4 weeks ago in Canada, I donated $500,000 to Aga Khan Foundation. And I have also, in last 2.5 years, I've donated, I think it was about $306,000 for 100 rickshaws to, I didn't forget the name of the organization, but 100 rickshaws in Karachi for people who couldn't afford and make a living out of it. Then I have also donated in Toronto for last 3 years to TCF, which is part of Citizen Foundation, about $130,000 to $150,000 from me. the other money came from my son. So we both shared the charity too. And there is a lady who, and it's not about big money all the time. It's about also small little sum. So there's a lady, I have an apartment in New York, although I live in Toronto. She comes to clean my apartment. She's a Muslim girl from Bosnia, and is doing a nursing course. She wouldn't have enough money, and she would be so worried about, she said, maybe I won't do study this semester. I said, no, for last 2 semesters, I've been paying her fees, and hopefully I'll be able to do more. So these little things make a lot of difference. And the way I feel, as much as Allah has blessed me, I have to give it back and also be prepared to meet my Allah and say, I did my best. And then it's up to Him to make a decision about me, who I am and what I did. He knows also. He doesn't make a decision at the last minute like us. So the whole point is that you do what you can and make it happen. You know, Citizen Foundation is such a big organization. I was there in Karachi to have a look at it before I started giving. The schools, the children are within 1 kilometer radius. And you'll see juggi, you know, like the huts. There, people don't even get enough food to eat twice, forget about 3 times. So when I saw it myself and I saw the kids, how they were studying and how polite and everything else, it blew me away. And I'm all for it. In fact, when I'm talking about it, I'm so nervous and I'm so emotional about it that it is very hard for me to understand what can I do to make it more for them and how can I do it. And I've got my chartered accountants, and they're not from Pakistan or anything. They're like Sri Lankan. I bring him to TCF, okay, write a $5,000 check. Okay, you do this. I've got a lot of influence with people, my clients, because I've been in real estate for 53 years. So, and I make them write a check, even if it's repellable. So, whatever little bit we can do and what I have been able to do, it has paid off tremendously. And one more thing, I didn't think about it till when I started working on these charities and giving all the time, is that Allah gives you back. And I'll give you an example. My retirement fund, when I give to every year 130 to 50,000 to TCF, I take out 50,000 from there. I'm supposed to take out only 25,000 a year. I take out, then I have to pay complete tax, 50% on that. I paid. The next year when I look at I don't look at my account too often, you know, and next year when I look at it, it's far more than what it was there. And that made me believe that Allah is doing something for me so that my account is not depleting and it is getting better. So I have seen it physically in my own way, how my wealth has grown. And that's all basically it. You know, just give, please, share. That's it, nothing else.
That's incredible. There's so much blessing for everything that you've done.
Thank you.
That's wonderful. That's kind of why I got into the burger restaurant business, because Prophet Muhammad said that feeding Muslims halal food is one of the best things you can do. So basically, whenever anybody eats a burger, we're getting a couple of blessings. So I'm just farming blessings at that point. All right, let's move on. All right. Dr. Ahmed, let's start with you. In your opinion, what's the most effective way to give back today?
So thank you, Shazad, and thank you, Ms. Dosa. This was so inspiring. And coming from heart, it makes such a big difference. So I was just listening to your story, and thank you for doing that. So, giving back is a very broad term, right? And there are different ways of giving back. Of course, there is philanthropy that all of us in some shape or form we do. As Muslims, as Pakistanis, we do in our own ways through communities. but there's open members. All of us are sitting here, and right before us, there was this excellent panel, and we enjoyed the discussion. So I was thinking, what can we do from in that capacity? And what I mean by that, mashallah, we are so blessed to have such tremendous skill set that we all immigrants, we came from Pakistan, and we are successful. We're successful in our different ways, in different fields, whether it's medicine, technology, business, and all of that, and doing so much better here in this country. So how can we transfer that skill set and that knowledge and translate into a larger success? I feel that a big part are two things. Education, which comes along with the mentorship, and culture. And I want to focus on the culture part. As we know that there are certain areas in the country, certain ecosystems in the country, where entrepreneurship is the key of that ecosystem. I look at our communities, our Pakistani American communities in this country, as also an ecosystem. If that culture of entrepreneurship is propagated and the skill transfer happens, the impact of that is in the downstream is huge. And that impact can happen both here in US as well as in Pakistan. On the Pakistan side, if we are able from the open platform, able to transfer that skill set, impart that knowledge and create a workforce and mentor them, and the companies that they create, the downstream wealth they create, would create such a huge impact because they will not only be changing one person's life, it will be giving lives to thousands, jobs to thousands. So that one you're making impact in my view. Thank you.
Yeah, that's the, give a man a fish versus teach a man to fish, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very good. One thing I noticed is that, you built your career across medicine, business, and AI. What first pushed you to think beyond being just a doctor?
So I think, like all of us, we came from different backgrounds. A lot of us here when we come from Pakistan, not from a very affluent. So I came from very low middle class background. And I was born in Malik Kokrapar, Karachi, which some of you may know is essentially a Kachi Abadi in outskirts of Karachi. Our home was essentially like a little one room house. We had like one room that has actual roof, and the rest was just kind of like sheets. Sheete bolte the unhe. And growing up, so working throughout, and I see all around me what was happening. And that thing is that, and this is not just part of that neighborhood. Even right now, the people that are living there, they have very limited means of getting by. So I guess growing up, when I was looking at a lot of that, I know that there is only one way out, really. And that one way out is education and making whatever I can make out of myself. So I think, coming back to your question, and the question that I think what changed me, what really inspired me, is that doing and it may sound like a bit more materialistic in a way, but making most money that I can. And the best way to do that is to find the most efficient, most quickest way, shorter way, whether it's through my business, through my training, and achieving that. But achieving that in a way to transfer, to make an impact. Because unless until you have means, we cannot make impact. And we were talking earlier that there was a theme about affluence to influence. So when we have affluence, we're able to make influence. Of course, you can do influence different ways too, where you can have different impressions, like an order, we can give a stronger message. But I think that part, that the affluence part, become a key component that we can make an influence. So it all translates back to that part. That was your question. Thank you.
So because I went to a workshop and they were talking about Muslims are focused on religious and spiritual growth, and now it's time for financial growth. I think we realized that we're kind of aligning the world donor, and that speaks to that. Like, yeah, you should be making as much money as possible, but to do things that will help the community.
Absolutely. I mean, I think there's a taboo as well out there in communities. And I talk about it often in my own medical community, that we, as physicians, we are thinking when you're training that we cannot talk about money. That how much are we making money afterwards? But I feel that there's nothing wrong talking about money. There's nothing wrong about earning a living, being successful, and translating that success to make an impact.
That's excellent. So what does living with a purpose actually mean to you?
Personally, for me, I know it's in a very aspirational way. I'll answer this question in a way. So I mentor a lot of students. So I'm part of Apna, Dr. Baba Rao was here. I've been involved with the YPC for the last 10 years or so. So we have like 25,000 plus young physicians. I've taught throughout my life. I've been teaching throughout. When you see someone grow, when you see someone successful, and then you look at them, their growth and their trajectory throughout, that's very fulfilling. So making an impact, influencing people, making them successful, I think that's personally very satisfying to me.
Yeah, and with all those talents, you can be doing many things, right? How do you choose what's worth your time?
Well, and then, I'll answer it more objectively, in a more detached way, because there's so many things that we can all get involved with, right? But number one, how much difference it's going to make? Because there are a lot of projects out there, but how much change is going to be impacting, whether it's a philanthropy, whether it's something else. Number two, how much effort it will take from my part. And number third, what the worst can happen. So that's the way I kind of look at generally like in anything when I'm making a decision. And that also goes to the philanthropy as well.
Beautiful. So, specifically on medicine, you're involved in AI. How do you see the technology changing the way we improve healthcare or give it back?
Well, I mean, it's such a hot topic these days, and everyone have their take, everyone have their input, and of course, there is a whole panel discussion later happening there. But I feel that personally, I was skeptical like 4 or 5 years ago, but with my experience, and now I actually own an AI company, a technology company, and my level of my opinion is changing every 6 months. And the change is in a very dramatic way. I do believe that we are at an inflection point in history right now. And I'm not just saying this lightly. I know that in healthcare, in next 5 years or so, things are going to drastically change. And a big part would be consolidation. And consolidation, not in a positive or negative way, it's just that will be like a grand disruption that's going to happen. There would be more output. There will be output in different ways that the AI is going to make things more efficient. Cost of goods and services is going to go down. There will be specialties going to become obsolete. There will be like opportunities for growth. But there is also a big opportunity here. And especially for us in the open, which we have a lot of tech entrepreneurs, and we all know that the growth curve that's there. But anyone that is making agentic AI applications in healthcare, and anyone that is getting most users, they want to be successful very quickly. And there will be a lot of winners and losers. And again, we're going to capture the market quickly. We're gonna be the winners. So the change, the big change in healthcare, like this is already happening or will be there.
Vastali, you talked about you built 2 villas, right? And you said you could have built 2 apartment buildings, right? So, like, what was your thought process on that? I mean, you told me the story. Why don't you share with everybody else?
I run because I own apartment buildings in Toronto. So in 2 of my buildings, I have musallas. And I fought with the government for a year and a half in the court. Because they said you can't have it in a building, a prayer place. And it was 1916 bylaw for the city. And so they won't let me do that. So after 1.5 years of going through it, the judge finally allowed me to have it. And in one of the musallas, during Ramadan and all that, about 700 people come to pray there. So it's quite a big one, although it's called musalla because it's not designated as masjid. But lot of it, and it's so easy for people who are living in my building also, like I have 334 apartments, 95% Muslims. So they come down running and go to their prayer. And even at Fajr, there are 200 people at Fajr for prayers, which is a pretty good thing. And at the same time, as soon as I'm going back, I want to donate to Aga Khan Foundation close to $1 million more. And so this is my plan, and we are working. Only my accountants have to okay it that I can do that. So that's what I'm going to do, inshallah.
Well, you're the boss, so probably say yes. For someone who wants to give back but isn't sure where to start, what advice would you give?
Sorry?
Somebody wants to give back, right?
Yeah.
But they don't know where to start. What advice would you give? Like when do you remember like earliest?
Just give it. Even if you have $1,000 to give it to somebody who needs it. And we all come across different types of people that need it. And charity begins at home. And so this is what I do, is I just keep watching. Anybody needs anything, honestly, if it isn't within my reach, I will do it. I won't even think twice, because I know that I have got this because of Allah. It's His blessings that He has brought me this far. I came to Canada in 1974 without any money, and I had no money. I worked at a company for 8 months, but in the meantime, I did my real estate course. I got my license, and after that, after getting my license, I didn't have the money to buy a car. And so I would go door knocking, 150 to 200 doors a day, and got my first listing and made my $1,250, and that's how I started my real estate career. So I know where I came from. And I come from lower middle class family from Pakistan. For education, I had a lot of problems. Unless I had scholarship and tutoring, I couldn't study. So I have gone through it, so that's why I can see further than what I can do.
I think that's true with a lot of people here, starting out from nothing, becoming something incredible, and then using that wealth to do something amazing in the community.
It's Allah's grace, Allah's blessing. Allah has been with me through and through, and He is still working on it.
Very good.
I am a believer to the degree that my granddaughter has her exam. For 2 hours, I will be praying frantically. 2 hours till she finishes her exam and she calls me, Nani, I did okay. Then, I'm fine. But otherwise, it's always been my thing that I don't worry about anything. I leave it to Him, but also I bug Him a little bit.
Well, with that's our time. Thank you so much, Ms. Dosa. Thank you, Dr. Ahmed.
Great panel. Thank you. Thank you.
Build versus buy. It's really buy versus vibe. Because I can vibe code a solution at a pretty low cost quickly to solve my problem and build something just the way I want it, rather than settle for something that was built for the masses and just configured for me at best. So with that, one thing that is definitely emerging is that the old playbook is no longer applicable. That playbook I described earlier of finding the median and replicating it. But this new era has created some very interesting opportunities. There are problems that were previously not solvable, and there are brand new problems that have been created, which has taken software known as a moat, but has created some additional moats that we can use going forward as entrepreneurs. So that is what we are going to be talking about on this panel. So in our view, there are these 3 different moats that can be used as moats in going into the future for tech startups. So we will each pretty much own each of the moats, because we have not just seen the theory, but actually lived that life. And we'll actually speak to our personal experiences as well as discuss with each other as we proceed on how we see each of these moats. So the first and the foremost on the list is the moat of having the ability to do discovery and build a bespoke solution.
That may sound pretty simple, but the reality is that it does take a very different kind of year to do actual discovery, a deep discovery with the customer to try to understand what their real problem is, rather than looking for an opportunity where you can fit a tool and sell them a tool, which is how most of us have been trained to do discovery. It takes a different kind of year. It takes a different kind of engineering mindset to build something that is going to be customized at scale. And the second part of that also is that the customer expectations have gone to expecting more outcomes. So I'll give you a personal example. Just a couple of weeks ago, I got an email that was quite intriguing. So as I mentioned, we run a startup accelerator. And one of the dreams of every startup accelerator is that you want to build a community of your portfolio companies. So I got an email that hinted at we can help you build a community of the portfolio companies where they can talk to each other directly. The demo video looked very powerful. It showed all kinds of statistics, a vibrant community that was talking to each other. Jumping on a sales call, my first question to them was, are you going to sell me a tool and I have to do the work, or are you going to help me build the community? And I think that question really underlines the change that I'm talking about over here. If you're going to sell me a tool to build the community, I can probably do a better job because I understand the needs of my community better. But if you're going to help me build and reach my goal of having a vibrant community, I'm going to open my wallet for you. And that, I think, is kind of the underlying change that is starting to happen in the industry. So the idea of if you have expertise of discovery and building bespoke solution, that is one of the modes, in my opinion, and that's the position that I'm taking. So now I'm going to turn to my panel, and Emily, start with you. Actually, you have been on the services side of the equation for the last 2 decades. How do you feel about it as the new mode of relationship and discovery? What are the unique things that you've seen people do and how this becomes a mode?
Yeah, and I would take it even beyond your role as the decision maker and your willingness to take a big.
For sure, what's going on?
All right, try that again. So you as the decision maker aren't willing to just deal with just a tool, but I'm seeing that even with the users at this point, particularly with the volume of AI tools that have gone out recently. I go into a lot of corporate customers where we go off and look and see a tool that they purchased or turned on. One example would be, it's this, thank you. Something. All right, is that better? Okay. So for one example, I went in and was talking to a customer who has a large recruiting function that was part of it, and they had added on the AI functionality to their recruiting software tool. And when I came in, we sat there and looked in and checked in with all their different recruiters. One was using it 3 months after they had purchased it. So needless to say, they turned that off and saved the money since it wasn't being used. But it was coming there to not just the decision maker feeling like it had to be useful for them, but then the actual individual workers who are very busy and overwhelmed and AI tools all over the place. They were looking and finding the friction of trying to figure out how to fit this within their daily workflow too much and didn't see the return on it. So it made their own decision not to make use of the tools. And you can get into cases where companies try and force people to or not, but that's an important feedback loop. And that then ups the level of trying to figure out how to make a bespoke solution that isn't just meeting the needs of one person that's telling you, but how do you start getting that out from the actual hands-on people across the organization itself?
Thanks, Emily. And I think, Musa, you have also lived this life, right? Deep in AI kind of started in the domain of building bespoke solutions and now moving towards the platform. Can you take us through the journey and how the ability to do discovery has kind of impacted you in building the moat?
Sure. So at Deepin, we started in the data labeling space. If you're in any type of AI, the fuel of your AI model is the data that it gets trained on and the data that you use to validate the system. And that data needs to be cleaned up, curated, labeled, and the labeling process can be very, very detailed with a human in the loop, with different tools and the enrichment that you have to do. So that was our thesis at the beginning, is we knew that a lot of the automotive companies were using this new sensor called LiDAR. And we knew that they didn't have the tooling or the technology to process it. So that was our insight. And to get our foot in the door, even if we gave them the tool, they didn't even have the users ready to use that software. So we decided early on to just solve this as an end-to-end outcome based. So they give us their data, we do the labeling, and we provide them the labels. So that was extremely welcomed by the customer. So we had to live this outcome based kind of change that the rest of the industry is living today. We had to live that 9-10 years ago when we started the company. And even when I was at Google, the Google mapping team, they had 10,000 people in Hyderabad doing data labeling for Google Map data. So those are the street view cars that go and collect video data in the streets, and then they go and they label, they say, this is a restaurant, what type of restaurant is it, it's what kind of cuisine, what are the opening hours, and they put the right image, so they ensure that there are no people faces even reflected on the glass, and if there is any license plates of the cars parked in front of the shop, that they're all taken care of. So very low level work, but at scale, when you want to hire 10,000 people, this is something our customers did not want to solve. And we were able to capture that insight because we knew with a company like Google that was on the frontier of this early on, we knew that was going to carry forward to the automotive market. And that was kind of our foot in the door. So that insider knowledge was very important to ensure that your customer sees a lot of value and does not want to replace you. So it's not about vibe versus buy, or in this case, can they build it? Yeah, I mean, yes, if you have enough money and power, you can build anything. But the approach is they shouldn't build it and they don't want to build it. That's where you fill in and you bring a lot of value to the customer and to the business that you are providing.
Great, Musa. So are you kind of making the point also, which I think is point number 2 here? You mentioned deep expertise and deep understanding of the customer. So it sounds like not only did you guys make a moat out of being outcome based, but also made a moat out of deep understanding of the customer. Can you just speak to that side of it? I know for deepen it makes sense, but as a generalized advice, what would you tell to our founders? And I think I'm coming at it from a historical angle also, because 10 years ago, as founders, you would often be told that if your expertise at niche, you have deep expertise in a niche, that may not be a great idea to build a company around because it's a niche. But it sounds like what you're saying is niche is what has made Deepen into what it is. So if you can just speak more to that.
Yeah, definitely. It's just because you're started in a niche doesn't mean it's not scalable to other verticals. And while there was still a lot of work for us to do in the automotive sector itself, we didn't branch out too much after that because there still was a lot of work to do in that segment. But the key thing here is if you look at the engineering culture in, say, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, and then the top OEMs, BMW, Mercedes, Toyota, etc. These are very, very proud engineering cultures, and they would like to build as many things as they can in-house and use their software using their own contractors to provide the services that they want. And many of our customers actually already had teams in India and in Bangladesh and Pakistan and other locations to serve these needs for them already. But what got them over the friction is that not only they didn't have the software, but they also didn't even have the skills to handle the 3D data or the sensor fusion data that we were able to handle. So in automotive specifically, they knew how to handle camera, they knew how to handle radar, but they had no clue how to handle LiDAR. And that was a gap that kind of was our foot in the door to even get the conversation. And I remember in 2018, Literally from the time we got a phone call from a lead at Mercedes to signing of the contract, that took about 35 days. And in Mercedes history, that never happened. We were the fastest vendor to onboard on the Mercedes platform in the Bay Area because they had that very, very specific need, and they had volumes and volumes of data that they needed to get done. So they pushed their procurement team, they pushed their vendor management system, and the engineering team that we were talking to, they literally kind of relaxed a lot of the requirements to meet where we were at that time, to just get their foot, to get us into the door. And then we grew with them over time. And the project didn't conclude till 2020. But the pain of what they were dealing with was so big that they, not only they needed us, like they were in dire, if you think of somebody who's drowning and you give them some oxygen, that's literally how data is to AI, is that if you don't have these labels, you do not have an AI system, and they will drown. So it's very, if you can get into a situation where your customer has that kind of need, you are golden, because then you get in a position of leverage, and you can bypass a lot of the shortcomings that you may have. And this is kind of the advantage, more broader than automotive. That's why always investors tell you to go after a big market, because in a bigger market, you have no room to make mistakes. And if you make one mistake and your company dies, that's not a great position to be in. Like if you're in surgical robotics and your robot surgeon kills somebody, that's it. You don't have a lot of room to make mistakes. And that's why how many surgical robotic companies are out there? 2, 3? But how many car companies are out there? There is a lot of room to actually make some mistakes in the automotive space. And then if you look at the more kind of the less safety critical aspects, you have thousands and thousands of products, like in the food and beverage industry and so
on. Makes sense. And so Emily, just getting your opinion on the same. And I think I'm going to combine mode 2 and mode 3. There's a dovetail here. So Musa's point is very well taken. It's the deep expertise that you have, the deep understanding that you have. But I think you have kind of seen it from another angle also, which is the ability to see patterns in what's going on today in an organization, because that's what you do every day, is walk into boardrooms and coach the executives on how to do the AI transformation. So how do you turn something that kind of an ability into a moat?
So if you think about if software has gotten really fast and the product dev part has gotten fast, that exposes all the things that you used to be able to kind of meander around and they weren't critical path because you were waiting on the build. And that includes things like the feedback loop and getting requirements. The amount of effort and time that took would be spread out across a long dev cycle. All of a sudden, if you've compressed the dev cycle, it's pretty noticeable. And it's actually a pretty big burden on your customer. If you're sitting there saying, I need to ask you 19 million questions, ask your people that report to you, and I'm going to come back next week after I iterate this and show you something and go through the whole thing again. At some point, they can't put that amount of time into it that used to be spread out over a year and a half into 3 months. They just can't do it. So that ups the need to get even better at the how can I figure out what's going on and what the problems are and how to solve them, and address back to the original points of how do we make a bespoke solution that's really going to fit in and reduce the friction for them and their team. You can't just have it be a pull and put that burden on the customer. You have to build that muscle yourself. So what I'm seeing is that become the bigger muscle on all of this than the actual build piece. It's shifting to how do you get it fit. I think the funniest example I have of this is a product company I was talking to a few weeks ago that they got their product up in 3 months. They've got it out in beta. The use case is one that is pretty high friction for the user. It's high value, but they're not going to get feedback for a while. And they're sitting there antsy, wanting to know what everyone thinks, and having to get cautioned on stop sending emails out asking for feedback. People are working at it. They're going to get back to you, but you're going to have patience that the beta cycle is actually going to be longer than the original dev cycle was, which just seems just out of control compared to what you would expect. So there's a big flip in thinking about even how do you resource What types of people do you bring in? Do you bring in people who are really good communicators and working with your customer? Do you also make sure that you've got the people who are able to recognize those patterns, bring in expertise of knowing what the problem is, and get really crisp on solving problems without making it a burden on the person you're supposed to be there serving?
And Musa, from your experience, again, I think patterns is kind of what we are getting into. The ability to see patterns across a problem. Have you had an experience that you've seen or lived at Deepan in another company where somebody has been able to just turn what they saw as a pattern and turn that into a moat successfully?
Yeah, in the AI space, not in the automotive sector, but we've seen in the generative AI, the LLM, when these models started to gain more traction, like when ChatGPT launched and so on, there was immediately a lot of demand across the board for human-in-the-loop feedback. And all of a sudden, companies that like literally have never done human text labeling, there was thousands of them that popped up. And one company in the space called Scale AI, they went and then I think they were like a couple of $100 million valuation, and then all of a sudden jumped to over 5 billion. Like literally, you can feel it overnight. Obviously, it took much longer, but for a lot of people, it felt like an overnight extreme increase in valuation. So the pattern that we saw there in the AI space is the amount of data required to get these models to improve was exponentially increasing. And we were trying to do a marketing kind of exercise at Deepan of, if you remember, there was the Moore's law of hardware, when the number of semiconductor transistors on a chip would double every 18 months. And we came up with our own law of data required by AI, and we said, you need to double the amount of data required for your AI model to double every year in order to just keep up with your competitors. And if you look at the amount of data that was required for between GPT-4 and GPT-5, it was double. And between 3 to 4, it was also double. But now what they got to at this point is they ran out of actual data, that human data that you can train these models on. So now they're having to go and synthesize and create fake data, essentially, to keep improving these models. And I'm not joking. Like literally, if you go and look online, there is a lot of demand for companies to open up their own private data so that these models can improve. The public data that is available on the internet is not enough to get the improvements on a lot of these models. And what you're seeing now is the next frontier is the multimodal aspect. So it's not just text data. Now you're trying to bring in video and audio and so on. So the pattern here is about the progress in technology, and specifically in AI, is just exponentially increasing. And if you can spot these patterns a year or so ahead of when they happen, you can monetize that significantly.
All right. So thank you, Emily and Musa. I'll just quickly summarize what we talked through. So I guess the most actionable way to look at it is that if you are a founder sitting in the audience with an idea to build your next SaaS, what we are really saying is that's not going to give you a durable business. What you need to be thinking about is how can you augment it either with a service or some really deep expertise, or your ability to match patterns that others are unable to see that you have access to. And with that, really just open it up to audience for any questions.
Who's got a question? Oh, we got a question right here. So.
I have a few questions. So you said, but all three are important. So build versus vibe, right? So how do we get attention of the customers because they feel like, oh, I can do vibe? The other question is related to what you mentioned. Now we can build that fast, but customers are not great at giving feedback fast. How do we handle that? And the third one is on the fake data. So if we keep doing that on the synthetic, then at some point, these intelligent systems, what are they going to become, right? So if we are calling it intelligent right now because they're using all humans' data,
But now you're all going synthetics. So what those systems will look like?
I guess we can each go in order really quick. So on the build versus vibe, the data that we are seeing from the field of these bespoke solutions, customers want to build themselves. And I think there's no point in fighting that tide off. You should let them. But none of those same customers, when you tell them that they're going to have to manage what they have built, are willing to sign up for that. Building the Lego is exciting. Turning it into a real house somebody can live in is a totally different job. So what we are seeing is that there is still a need for somebody to come in. What the customer does the best is the prototyping of what they need, but there is still a need for somebody to come in and actually turn it into a system that somebody's willing to maintain and own long term. Emily, you want to take yours?
Yeah, I'm going to actually quibble with one thing you said. I think there's some engineering groups that really want to build themselves, but at the end of the day, the leadership doesn't really want to build or buy. They just want the problem solved in the most effective way possible. So that's the $1 million question at the end of the day. And if you're bringing the tool that is no longer the most effective answer and they feel they can build it themselves, which is what we're running into, you've lost your value and you need to make up for it. And that's where then the next problem can't become, it is so difficult to work with these people because they are tying up my team 9 million times. That has to be a muscle everyone is needing to learn to build now in terms of how can we beef up that capability. I'd also say you have to beef up some other capabilities that like the sales and breaking through the noise. All of those other things that were kind of secondary to the software dev process.
Yeah, just to add to that, it's really around the value that you can show. So if you think about how much money was spent on AI pilots in the past 3-4 years and how much outcome, like how much business savings, increase in sales, efficiencies, or layoffs that you see as an outcome of that. So we started to see some of these results starting to come through just now. I just read today, Facebook officially announced they're doing a 10% layoff in May. So that means they are realizing some value out of these AI systems. But this is now 2026. This was not the case when ChatGPT first launched. In 2023, you saw all of these, like tons and tons of startups getting funding like crazy to just build things on top of ChatGPT. And nobody buys that anymore.
And I want to share one story. There was a company called iCal.
iCal, it's a couple of founders. You take an image of your food and it calculates how many calories it has in it. And they were very smart in marketing. They were actually just using Gemini from Google in behind the scenes. It takes a picture of the food. It estimates how many calories it has. It was completely inaccurate, but they managed to get to 30 million revenue so quickly. They got acquired by MyFitnessPal. So one guy, a vlogger on YouTube, said, I can build this product in less than 10 minutes on Cloud Code. And the founder of iCal said, yes, you can today, but can you go and get 30 million worth of revenue? So it's all about distribution. It's all about go-to-market. That ability to get your product across and deliver on the results is now the differentiator. It's not just the technology. It's not just the tool. It's not the adoption. It's the actual value that you're creating out of it.
Do we have time for another question?
We don't. I'm going to be the horrible person. I'm so sorry.
I think we'll just pause here then. Well, thank you both. And Moby, you're
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
I work with startups and enterprises to run their LinkedIn ads. I scaled a SaaS company from 2 million, 3.7 million in about 6 months. I scaled another paid ads program from $6,000 in revenue to 2.5 million in 18 months. That got acquired. I reconfigured a $700,000 a year LinkedIn ads budget for Vinafi, which got acquired for 1.56 billion. And I just signed a deal with an enterprise to reconfigure their LinkedIn ads. So if you are looking for somebody GTM, I'm always happy to have a chat. This is my only pitch. All right, who's ready for some healthcare and AI? Who's ready for some healthcare and AI? Awesome. This next session is called The Future of Healthcare in the Age of AI. This is going to be a great session. We've got our moderator, Dr. Shalan Baig,
Chief Medical Officer of Concert AI, Senior Advisor for Clinical Research, National Cancer Institute, Adjunct Associate Professor at UT Southwestern Medical Center. Then we've got Dr. Khan Siddiqui, who I had the pleasure to meet last year at Austin MedTech Connect Conference. He's the founder and CEO of Hopper and the ex-CMO and Chief Strategy Officer at Hyperfine. We've also got Dr. Sara Rana, Associate Partner at Legendary Ventures, Principal Rana Family Trust, and former member at OpenAI. And we have Ambreen Nihal, founder, Herd, an MIT-based femtech venture firm, an adjunct facility at MIT Critical Data. Please give a huge round of applause for our next panel.
Thank you very much. I had a little bit of color to add to the introductions. But before we start, can we have a round of applause for Bilal, who's keeping everyone on track? Because I was very, very clear. You're keeping everyone on track on time, right? So thank you. Because I was very certain we're going to be 45 minutes late, and you're keeping everyone right on time. So thank you very much. So why are there for physicians? Physicians are known to be very boring, very single-tracked. And yet we're here to share some of our perspectives in the Open Dallas event today. We heard a little bit of the introductions of our panel members, but I want to give a little bit of a perspective on how physicians who in general occupy an important but different responsibility and role in the Pakistani community are trying different aspects outside of the clinic as well. So we have a wonderful panel here, and I want to thank everyone for coming to Dallas and sharing their time with us. So Sara Rana she sits at the intersection of medicine, business, and policy. She has her MD from UT Southwestern and then received an MBA from NYU Stern. She's an associate partner at Legendary Ventures, as we heard, and she's an advisor to the Texas Health and Human Services Commission. So she focuses on scaling AI-driven solutions that transform patient care, healthcare systems, and early stage innovation. So bringing very distinct aspect to our panel today. And we have Dr. Ambreen Nihal. She graduated from the Khan University and then received an MPH from Harvard School of Public Health and an MBA from MIT School of Management. She's adjunct faculty at MIT. She's a former chief medical officer of a $100 million 14-center health agency in New York City, former Medicaid advisor. She's a founder as well, and is going to bring a perspective of the payer and the federal government to our panel today. And also, last but not least, Dr. Khan Siddiqui, also graduate from the Khan University, who is a radiologist. And we always hear about how AI is going to replace radiologists' jobs. So I'm really eager to hear why that's not happening. And he holds dozens of patents in radiology, AI, imaging processing, data visualization. He started his career at Microsoft, where he helped develop the infrastructure behind Xbox Connect. So a lot of the kids will recognize that application. And then he founded Higgy in 2012, which was a consumer health company that conducted 700 million health screens and had a 4.2 billion SPAC deal. He's currently the chair and CEO of Hopper, which is developing the next generation of AI solutions for radiology. So very excited to have all of you here today. So one of the messages that we want to send is for us in the Pakistani community to think about how we can leverage our physician resources. And we sometimes see in the healthcare space that the perspective of founders and entrepreneurs from a medical standpoint may come from that of being a patient or having a family member who is pursuing a career and have a very clear sight of the problem. And I think we all have had these discussions leading up to the panel on how you wish that there was a physician on that table when the idea was being conceived. So maybe we can do around the horn, start with you, Sara, and talk about the importance of having a physician on the founding team and what have you seen that value being?
Hello, assalamu alaikum. First, just want to say thank you so much for having me here. I think the first important point with startups or innovation is to really understand the market you're in. So a lot of times founders will be in this healthcare industry and not understand the regulatory complications, the payer codes, the way to fundraise a round, to raise money. And so it's really important to build a board of advisors who have experience in doing this. So I think the first point we always talk about is when we invest in founders, we're not just investing in the idea, but the actual people. So what's their story? How did they get to where they are today? Do they understand the complications and risks that are associated with being an entrepreneur? So they understand how hard it is to close an enterprise dealer contract in hospital systems. If not, then have they built a team or advisory board who have those skills so that they're able to get to the end goal? And so I think it's really important in healthcare that there is a physician or someone who really understands the sales cycle, the FDA approval process, how to really make clinical workflows one, nationalized kind of unity. But I think what's really hard is a lot of times people don't understand the industry they're getting into. And so the really important piece is making sure that you have experts and advisors to really get there. And so I think the value for physicians is that they can explore different areas and opportunities to allow for people to flourish in these areas. So a lot of physicians are advisors in startups. A lot are investors or angel investors in companies. They take board seats, and that's a really great way to get involved.
Thank you.
Salkim, thank you for the question. I say that Sarah took a lot of the best answers, but we already heard in the previous panel about the fact that you need to be able to figure out how to create new assets and not just kind of save time, but be able to grow. So if you have somebody, so even as a physician, are you bringing somebody on board who's a frontline physician who can tell you about the workflow? Or are you bringing on somebody who's been in a decision-making capacity, who's had to determine like what tech does the enterprise or the health system bring on? So you want to also think about what kind of physician you're bringing on, and can they help you understand how decisions are made? To your point about regulatory aspects, they're going to be like, so I get asked if I'm doing, for instance, part of how I pay my bills is I do some insurance reviews. And everybody's like, well, isn't that getting replaced by AI? But meanwhile, many states are having regulations where only a physician can sign that. So those are the nuances that sometimes only somebody who's been in that hot seat or in a decision-making capacity can answer.
I think what the answer is, the other dependence is pretty spot on. I want to add something else to that. One of the ingredients that is most important for a successful entrepreneur or a startup is deeply understanding the problem better than anybody else. So if you're trying to build a startup in healthcare, trying to solve the problem, you really need to understand what is the problem that you're trying to solve and how deep that is. I mean, Hopper is a radiology, medical imaging AI company. We have 9 radiologists full-time on the team, not helping the commercial team, but actually engaged or working directly with the R&D folks. So they understand exactly what is the problem you're trying to solve. So I think that insight becomes very important. And one of the things you will hear when you go to any kind of startup pitches is that the founder insight that you've had that everybody else has missed, that leads to a very successful way to solve the problem where you can leapfrog the incumbents that are in the space. And that doesn't happen without understanding the problem. So one of the reasons to have physician on your founding teams or part of the team, not just as an advisor, but embedded, is the only way to get it is to have that deep understanding of the problem.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much. I'm going to come back to you, Sarah. Now, you're a physician and a venture capitalist. I sometimes feel that there's a mismatch between the companies that are being developed or the companies that are being proposed in the healthcare space versus the actual need. Can you talk about what you're seeing in the healthcare space on what successful companies or promising companies are looking for? And what is a gap that you feel is really untapped right now in healthcare as a general with a $5 trillion industry? Like, where do you see the opportunities that people who are looking to enter the healthcare space or are in the healthcare space should consider?
Yeah, I think the first point I want to say is now with AI, a lot of companies are not as unique as we think they are. It's gotten so nuanced where I'll see 50 to 100 companies in diabetic neuropathy, the wearable space, everyone doing the exact same thing. So I think the blessing is now we have so much access to AI and technology that can make innovation so much easier. But at the same time, how do you differentiate yourself in the world of AI and VC and innovation? So then, we as venture capitalists, we take people's capital, right? So we are making decisions very limited decisions on who we invest in and whether we're going to return money back to our investors, right? So people tend to forget that we don't have unlimited resources to give to everyone, and we're deciding on behalf of our LPs or investors. So we have to make really critical decisions on who's going to, be investable and who's going to be on the 10 to 15 year long journey of with us. So, it's kind of like dating or getting to know someone before marriage. It takes time. So a big piece before we decide to invest in someone is actually getting to know the founder and team personally, both professionally and personally, because there's that element of, when the things get tough, are you going to be able to get through it with us? Are you going to be persistent? Are you going to be honest about your challenges? I think that's one. In terms of healthcare, I think a lot of the problems I see is there are very nuanced solutions, but there's not any healthcare solutions that fix the silos that exist today. So, for example, an EHR system or, something that helps with prior authorization, but that's only one piece in the healthcare system. So how do you really integrate all of that into clinical workflow and actually make work easier for physicians on both the provider and payer side? I think that's the biggest challenge I've noticed.
When we think about who pays for a lot of these products, it's a very different space because of the regulation, because of the role that the federal government has, that insurance companies have, the fact that now health savings accounts are becoming a thing. There's some creativity on what can be done in terms of healthcare aspects, and oftentimes there are a lot of medical conditions that prevent those patients to use a lot of the solutions that they have. So when we're thinking about new companies and new ideas, walk us through who the major customers are in the healthcare space.
Yeah, so I think there's a bunch. I think before I answer that, I'd also like to point out that there's health tech, which often these are founded like on the revenue cycle on the back end. There's also life sciences, right? So there's pharma, there's academic research. So thinking about, when we talk about who are the customers, there's obviously the payer. But then you also want to think about not just payer, but segments in the market. So is it federal government? Is it state government? Are they Medicare Advantage plans, which are private plans? Because each of those are a different animal. There's obviously the clinical side. Are you going to small practices? Are you going to large academic medical centers? Is this a PE-backed, type of environment? There's going to be some direct to consumer, particularly like in the wearable space. And, a lot of, increasingly, for instance, people are using like ChatGPT or Claude for health directly. Those are probably like the major ones I think about, but did I forget anything? Got it? Good.
So, yeah. So, Khan, all right, this question always comes up, right? Well, who was this tech founder who said radiologists are going to be unemployed in 3 years? I think 5 years have passed since that prediction. You shared with me at lunch that right now there are 3,000 open radiology positions for radiologists, and you're only producing 1,000 radiologists this year. So that tells me, related to some of the themes that we had in the previous panels, that the true value for AI in medicine is just not known, the same way it's probably not entirely clear in other organizations as well. So talk us through your journey in AI and in healthcare, and what was the inflection point that drove you to do what you're doing for radiology and artificial intelligence?
That's like multi-level questions in one thing. Let me go with the other one, the job one first. I'll get to it. I got to radiology, fortunate to be starting the first imaging informatics training program in the country. And that's when I got exposed to machine learning in 2004 and, computer vision, machine learning, and AI before anybody else even calling it AI. And that led to my amazing academic career, followed by Microsoft career and so on. So I've been doing this for decades now. And a lot of the team at the Microsoft that we were ended up going and seeding all the labs, right? So like VP of product at OpenAI was an intern on my team. The direct person running Anthropic's operations was my chief of staff, right? So like I'm really plugged into what is happening in that aspect because of that reason. So to get to this idea of Jeffrey Hinton, famously from Toronto, said this idea in 2016. The funny thing is, he said it after ResNet, which is a neural network, beat human performance for the first time. ResNet was my project that I started at Microsoft before I left, right? So I actually know Jeffrey Hinton, and I called him up and called out on him what he said, like that you'd have no idea what radiology does. Like, that's not a kind of statement you need to say. But anyways, he predicted in 10 years, will be no more radiologists. And well, it's way past 10 years and we are still here. And not only that, but we're thriving, and there's actually shortage of radiologists. The issue is this concept they call Jevons paradox, in which where things becomes easier to do, people assume they will disappear, but actually the utilization goes through the roof, and you suddenly have not anticipated the kind of workforce needed to support that aspect of it. So what is happening in healthcare right now? There are tons of forces that are actually increasing imaging volume. So the most prominent one is our population is aging. People are living longer. So most imaging happens in patients who are above age 65. So as that pool increases, we will see increase going up. Just that pool in the next 10 years is going to increase imaging by 20%, right? Just aging population, no other factor, right? So that's 20%. There's a paper came out in February 2025 from called Radiology that showed how imaging volume is going to go up, purely because the fraction of portion above age 65 is going to grow. Second is our practice patterns have changed with more NPs and PAs being frontline. And they're ordering 3 times more imaging because they need that to figure out what is going on with the patient. A lot of clinicians going through residency programs and med school are able to make decision diagnoses without requiring special testing, but NPs and PAs require more testing to get to the same thing. So that is putting pressure on, so that is on top of the aging population. Third is ER turnaround time pressures, right? So because you want to get the patients out fast, it is much faster to get imaging done and get them out too. So that is increasing volume. So CT volume was supposed to grow at 1.2% annually just based on practice in ER. It is going at 7% annually right now. So it is like 6 times more that we predicted what the growth would be 10 years ago. And the last is therapeutic drugs. So all the drugs are coming out that either require imaging to figure out dosimetry or require imaging to figure out complications. So we were talking about Alzheimer's. So a drug named lecanemab came out a few years ago to assess complications of to address Alzheimer's, but the best drug so far that has shown any kind of improvement in Alzheimer's. But it has a complication that can only be seen on MRI. So before 2022, when the drug came out, we were not doing MRI scans for Alzheimer's. Now, 6,000 Alzheimer's patients who get on this drug require 5 MR scans per year. So we're adding 36 million MR scans, but we are not adding any more neuroradiologists. Who's going to do these scans? Who's going to read them, right? So the pressure on imaging has gone up because of that reason. And so what is happening is there are 3,000 jobs in the market. We only train 1,000 radiologists every year. And plus with the big, beautiful bill, they're cutting that by 10% more. So we're actually putting more pressure on that aspect, or something has to change. And that's where this demand for AI has just gone through the roof for imaging. Let me give you one anecdote. Let's do a time machine exercise. Let's go to 1900. And the Model T car has just come out and people are buying it. And everybody, at that time, before the car came out, there was a person called a driver who would take you from your home to a restaurant, but would drive a horse carriage. And the skills were, how do I clean the dung and feed the horse? That was the skill, right? Today, million-folds more people do the same job using an app and a car. But 20% of app rides in Chicago happen to the airport. Can you imagine in 1900, people knew what airport was? No airplane has not been invented yet. So we are in that era right now. So we've invented the car, but we don't know how people will use this in the future because airplane has not been invented yet. So if we assume there's going to be no more imaging modalities discovered, like all CT, MR, ultrasound, nuclear medicine came out in the last 30 years. In the next 30 years, you don't think we'll come up with new imaging techniques? Yeah, we don't need any radiologists. We don't think there'll be new imaging techniques or new drugs coming out, then you don't need radiologists. Like at Hopper, we have 165 million patient records, all collected before the pandemic, right? When did Ozempic come out on formulary?
Probably in the last 5-7 years.
5 years, right? 0 patients among 165 million patients had Ozempic on them. So my modules have never seen patient on Ozempic, never seen patient on lecanemab. So if you think no new drugs are going to come out, no new therapies are going to come out, no new surgeries are going to happen, then sure, we don't need radiologists. But if we continue to do that based on current architecture of how transformer architecture works and AI, it's all based on historic data, it is really hard to think about radiology getting replaced or any clinician getting replaced.
Great perspective. So one of the things that bothers me a lot about digital health therapeutics is when the FDA approves a pill, let's just say the FDA approves aspirin for headache, whether that aspirin is given at UT Southwestern, a tertiary care medical center, or if it's given in Midland, Odessa by a nurse practitioner, it functions the same way. But when it comes to digital health therapeutics, we know that the training and the performance of the therapeutic is usually validated in an ideal scenario, but there's a lot that can change on the implementation side. So can you walk Ambreen, the group through how they can make their solutions more resilient so that they are applicable in a broader population? And how do developers and then also the physicians have that insight on what to look for when something's coming down their pike?
Yeah. I think when we were talking about it, you also mentioned the topic of bias, right? And so I think in today's environment, there's a lot of sort of politicization of the term bias, and people kind of like cringe when they hear about it. But really, in even the last couple of panels, bias is just about accuracy. If you are building a model that's supposed to predict X, does it predict X or does it predict Y, right? If you are a left-handed tennis player and you're forced to play like a right-handed tennis player, are you going to have the same outcome? So that's a way to think about bias and get past all the politics behind it. Actually, who here was here last night? Raise your hand. So there was two kinds of chai, right? One was brown and one was pink. If you were to tell AI which one was chai, it might only call one of it chai, right? And actually, those of you who have phones, take out your phone right now, go to Google or whatever your search engine of choice is, and put in dog, muffin, AI, and go to the images. So if you put in dog, muffin, AI, I'm seeing some smiles, they look very similar. So that is the importance of data labeling. So there are these things called golden data sets, which are where humans have labeled the data to ensure that you can say chai is chai, a dog is not a muffin. That is one level. So there's when we talk about GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. Is there the right data? Is the data labeled correctly? But then further, what you're getting at also is the context in which it's applied. So in an earlier panel, we heard about somebody growing up in a kachi abadi. The health experience of that person in a kachi abadi without even formed walls is very different from somebody living in defense with a driver and an army of servants. But in the data set, both will be Pakistani. Both will be living in Karachi, and there's all these things that the data are simply not going to capture. So, and that also goes back to your earlier question about why physicians are important, because physicians day in, day out already kind of are processing all these things, like what Khanbhai just said about the difference between a nurse practitioner and a physician, and physicians can make diagnoses because of our many years of experience and our many hours of training. So the important thing is that, yes, use a golden data set where the data have been appropriately labeled, but also think about, are you taking data, like are you treating somebody, does your data set come from a kachi abadi or does it come from defense? Does it come from Flower Mound or does it come from, an inner city sort of place? So making sure that the data that you use for training your model represent the same population that is going to be deployed on. And you're not going to ever have a perfect model, but then intentionally be sure that you are able to retrain your data or you retrain your model for the populations in which it's going to be deployed.
Fantastic. We have 3 minutes left. 3 minutes left. Are there any questions in the panel? Because I can keep going. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm Sohail Chuktai, orthopedic surgeon, and AI and telehealth entrepreneur from London. My question is to all of you. The shelf life of healthcare software is decreasing very fast. Software comes in, 6 months, obsolete. What if we triangulate a software with a hardware technology to increase the shelf life, to increase the uniqueness, and to increase the functionality? This applies to your field as well. So I'm very interested in developing. I'm actually doing it now, and I see the difference. My previous softwares used to expire in a year or two. What I'm making now, I'm, for example, using GPU to increase the concurrency of processes, as compared to GPU. That software has more utility, is living longer, and I think it's much more value. What do you think?
So for those people who've been to CVS or Kroger, the airport, and you put that machine, your hand in the machine to detect your blood pressure, that was Higgy. That's the company that Khan exited. So Khan, you want to take an answer to the question of software and hardware?
I'll ask a question. So there's, we call foundation models. You've heard OpenAI and Anthropic is doing it. There's similar foundation model healthcare happening. You know what is the average lifespan where a healthcare foundation model stays state of the art today? Can you guess how many months, years? 7 months is versus anybody else? It's 53 days. Right? So if you're okay with living with a poor quality model for 6 months, knowing that 6 better models have already come out by then. So I think this idea of 1 year waiting for software is over. So if you look at, I was also CMO of Hyperfine, and one of the things I did over there was anticipating this is going to happen. We work with FDA that we will update MRI scanner every 2 weeks. FDA freaked out because they don't have a process to get approvals done in 2 weeks, every 2 weeks. So we compromised and we came to 6 weeks, right? So that MRI scanner is upgraded every 6 weeks. It's an MRI scanner. Upgrade every 6 weeks. Higgy kiosk I'm talking about is updated every 2 weeks in the pharmacy. Right, so we've been doing this. The Higgy kiosk has been updated since 2012 every 2 weeks. So this idea of a year-long software is kind of gone. And partnering with hardware is much easier to do the rapid updates because you want all the errors to quickly be resolved. You want performance to improve very well. You want the image quality for MR scanner to keep improving. So you people who bought the Hyperfine scanner in 2000 now have the same scanner, but 10 times more better image quality, almost 30 times faster imaging, purely software updates. No hardware was changed. So I think that is this idea of long-term stuff is probably out the door now. You have to be very comfortable with and expect your vendors to have very rapid updates on software as long as they're able to maintain quality and safety of that aspect of it. That's how I feel about it.
Okay. Thank you very much. We have 1 minute left, so 20 seconds each for final words. Final thoughts.
If you want to be a founder, understand how hard the journey is and understand what industry you're going into and do a lot of research and don't be afraid to ask for help and be honest.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of human-centered design and design thinking. So when you're thinking about trying to go to market and sell, think about all the different personas that you will need to use your tech. And one thing we didn't get to, but in terms of always make sure you understand the decision-making unit. You can get the pilot easily through your internal champion or who you know on the board, but actually going to scaling within an enterprise or an industry, you need to be able to meet the needs of multiple people, including those who are skeptical. So last also thing is that you not only need to, like this was said in an earlier panel, save money or reduce costs, you also need to be up and to the right. How are you going to help that enterprise gain more market share, gain more customers, gain more revenue?
Remember, the default is always no, right? So if you don't try anything, it's no. If you want to do anything, you have to try. And if you haven't tried 100 times, you haven't tried at all, right? So if the average startup success is 10% or even 1%, try it 100 times and you'll be successful.
That was great. Thank you. Starting in a minute, how has this day been for you? Somebody shout me a takeaway that they've taken from this day. I will stare at you silently and make you uncomfortable until you say something. Agentic AI. I like it. Somebody else? Productive. Somebody, one more person. We'll do 3. Educational. I like it. Did you get to meet some cool people? Hell yeah. Okay, so this is the last panel. This is called Beyond Software, Building Defensible Companies in the AI Era. This panel is about what it takes to build something defensible when AI is changing, or I would say eating the landscape underneath every single company. Please help me welcome to the stage our panelists, PhD from UT Austin and co-founder of Vixel, who will have VixelCon in 2 days, an accelerator for emerging tech and AI service companies, Atif Suleiman, and also the founder and CEO of Deepen AI and faculty in strategy and product, Mohammed Musa, and the founder of Avela, a firm helping mid-market operators and boards turn AI into operating discipline. Emily, Lewis, Linnell, please give them a huge round of applause.
So I think I should stand up because we have a very difficult job here to make sure that we can get some energy back when everyone else is so tired.
We'll be totally okay if you do not have any questions, but we would appreciate if you can ask us one at least so we'll feel better.
With that said, I think what we're going to talk about is a really important question that has actually come up multiple times since morning as well, which is that with AI, the moat is no longer software. The idea, the previous playbook that tech startups have followed for almost 2 decades was pretty simple. When I started my first company in 2013, the playbook was simple. You look, it was not simple to execute, but well understood. You look for that median requirements, a set of customers that have the similar requirements. You build a tool. You kind of leave the messy edges to the customer to figure out. And you sell them a license, a per seat license of the software for them to solve their own problem. But that playbook at this point has changed. And that's what we're going to be talking about. Before I get into the depth, I would request my esteemed panel to first introduce themselves. Emily, we'll start with you.
Hi, everyone. Emily Lewis-Pinnell. As he said, I lead Avela, which is focused more on helping non-technical leaders figure out how to bring AI in for themselves and their organizations. I have a background in having built up teams. I led the public cloud practice at NTT Data, and more recently had teams that were building out AI pilots and taking them into production. But I looked and saw the bigger challenge right now being how this broader workforce that isn't thinking about tech every day in and day out, they're hearing AI is getting really important, and that's where the biggest friction and adoption has happened. So I spend my time working with companies to figure out how can they empower their people, how can they focus on what's important and what's not, and what's feasible without kind of feeling like they have to get a master's in computer science.
Musa. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Mohammed Musa. I'm founder and CEO of a growth stage company called Deepen AI. Started about 9 years ago, focused on multimodal AI data and infrastructure. We work with automotive OEMs, tier 1 suppliers, robotics companies that use multiple sensors to achieve autonomy or computer vision, sensor fusion. Before Deepen, I was at Google, and before Google, I was at 3 startups serving technical sales and engineering roles before that.
Thank you both. And myself, Atif Suleiman, I started my career as an engineer and as an academician. I was a professor at UT Austin, and then switched over to being an entrepreneur about 12 years ago with my first company and exited that. And then now I run a startup accelerator by the name of Vixel. And this topic is particularly dear to me because at Vixel, we have placed a bet on an era when software will no longer be the primary moat. And it's the thesis starting to really play out right in front of our eyes. So I was very excited when I was asked to moderate this panel. So the 2 patterns that I just want to sum up really quick on why we are.
Let me just within the room, and I want everyone to participate in this sort of a show of hands or poll. How many of you believe that AI will result in loss of jobs or loss of employment? Interesting. Okay, that's a smaller number than I had expected. Okay. And how many of you actually believe that your own current role or your trade or your business, your marketing manager, your sales guy, whoever you are, your immediate role is possibly going to be eliminated. Interesting. A very small number. No software engineers here? Okay, Ghazi, we need you to convince them something is going on here, right? So, so the context of the panel is there have been actually a lot of reports, numbers have been cited that 80 to 95% of the POCs that are created within companies, they do not translate to business value. They don't get adopted widely. What we are going to discuss in this panel is we're going to go around the room, and these people are very, very capable people. All of them I respect tremendously. You will actually see very diverse opinions, very carefully chosen from different areas, different verticals within the industry. And we're going to talk about, first of all, is AI adoption in the industry, is it actually translating to business value or not? And second, if it is not translating to any economic value or any adoption, what are the reasons that it is not translating into business value? So without further ado, I will go around the panel and I will ask everyone to introduce themselves. Adnan?
Hi everyone, Adnan Ijaz. I lead the product management. I recently joined Google, so I lead the product management for AI for databases in Google Cloud. Prior to that, I was at Amazon for a few years, not actually a few years, for close to a decade. But last few years, I was working on the agentic AI, and I worked on the developer productivity tooling.
Next, so I'm Manisa Zadeh. Interesting journey into this. I actually started out in corporate finance and then moved over slowly to the product space. And currently, for the last 15 years, I've been doing product strategy and growth across AWS, Microsoft, and Splunk. And currently, I'm in the security vertical at Microsoft.
And Ghazi Masood, I'm the CRO of Replit. I'm one of the rare VCs that's been in go-to-market and not tech for the last 30 years. So the first 15 years of my career was in big tech at Avaya, Microsoft, and Oracle. And the back 15 years of my career has been in venture-backed startups. So I have done everything from early stage, mid-stage to late stage, and now smack dab in the middle of the AI revolution here, trying to make a difference.
I keep this short. I've just lost my voice for some reason. Farah Ali, I'm in tech. I started my career at Microsoft as an engineer. Then I moved to eBay, where I worked on marketplaces. I ran a VC-backed startup as a co-founder and CTO. And then I'm currently a vice president in Electronic Arts, working on transforming game development through AI.
Thank you. Sorry, Farah, to actually, I will keep it short for you. So Adnan, I will start with you. You worked for a good amount of time on building Amazon Q, right? So you were working there.
Hero and Amazon Q.
Yes. So you were working there. You must have seen, at least within some clients, you must have seen some proof of concept being built. You were there in early days of agentic AI. How many of the POCs that you saw, they actually translated into what we as engineers call it, how many made it to production as opposed to they were just pockets of, just the graveyard of POCs?
Yeah, I think it has gotten much better. I would say off late, you mentioned 80% of the POCs don't make their way to production. Yeah, and there are all kinds of different numbers. I've also seen, I think BCG recently published a number like about 20% of the POCs, between 20 to 30, make it to the production. I would say I think, to me, if you had asked me this question in 2024, there was a lot of skepticism, whether is this just hype or is it real? Is there real business value at the end of it? And I think the question has shifted from, hey, whether there is real value or not, to how do I realize it? And I actually think that it is real. I mean, I think it's a foregone conclusion at this point. I don't have to sell it to anybody that AI is real and your enterprise can drive a lot of value out of it. Now, the question is, how do you get to it? And I think your question it borderlines that, because part of the reason that a large number of POCs don't make their way to production is because I think a lot of people are still thinking AI as just a feature. But in my experience and what I believe is essentially a paradigm shift. The parallel that I would draw to is the early days of cloud computing. Although Gen AI is on, like, it's like cloud computing on steroids, but I think you can learn a lot from it. So in the early days of cloud computing, you would go to enterprises and you would say, hey, cloud is great, on-demand consumption, unlimited scale, elasticity, blah, blah, blah. And it was real. It was all good. But yet it took a while for enterprises to move their workloads to the cloud. Like, which application do you choose? How do you move to the cloud? You would also have cases where people would move their application to cloud, and actually it would take them more money to run those workloads. And doesn't mean that the cloud wasn't real. So I think I am seeing the same thing transpire with Gen AI in some shape or form, where the value is there, but how do you realize it is going to be the question. And I think that's where a lot of enterprise deployments are running into blockers, like do you have the right data governance? Do you have the right skill set? Are you bringing the right partners to help build with you? So all kinds of that stuff. So I think it's a long way of saying the value is real, but that how do you realize value out of it? That part is evolving. And I think it has gotten much better over the past 2 years. I'll wrap it up with this. In 2024 at Amazon, we were building the Amazon Q Developer, which was the precursor to Keto. And I think it was hard even for our own internet developers, all of them, not everybody, but most of them struggled to buy into that this technology could actually help them write real software. And now it's gone. Like, I think everybody is, the developer productivity is one of the main use cases of Gen AI so far. So I think I would say this adoption curve will rapidly grow with the next 12 to 18 months. And I think we'll see more production applications coming out of it.
And you think the operating model has to be changed? Because, fundamentally, agentic AI it's fundamentally different, right? So do you think in the organizations, they have to fundamentally re-envision or rethink their operating model?
I do think so. I think you will see, the way I look at it, there's going to be some workflow level AI optimizations, and there will be ROI there. Like, you ask HR questions, you have a chatbot, or you have agentic stuff, you can interact with it. And I think there's an organizational level ROI. So you can see the workflow level ROI pretty quickly. You implement, you take it to production, you can have some metrics, you measure that. But if you really want to see as an organization, you're making all these large investments, and is it making the organization more productive? And I think that requires essentially organizational re-engineering. How do you take care of the data? How do you build the evaluations? It's not just the technology problem, it's also the people problem. Much like any big industry trend, it's never about one particular piece. It's like the end-to-end, and it's a human, it's a processes, it's all of it.
The one thing that I was going to add, I think the AWS background similarity shows in, because it really does remind me of the AI transformation on steroids that the customers are going through. And one example that I come back to frequently is in the early days of AI, one of the blockers was you've turned my CapEx into OpEx now. And so it had nothing to do with technology. It actually had everything to do with their financials that got in the way of adoption. So I think everything has to transform.
And OpEx is going to go up, right? So so NVIDIA and Claude, they will keep making money, and others will be spending money for them, right? So, okay. So Farah, you are the VP of AI transformation at EA. So speaking of AI transformation, what are, in your opinion, what are the reasons in an organization for failure of any such effort?
I think you have to look at what's the business problem you're trying to solve, right? And AI is not the solution. It's you're doing business transformation through technology, be it AI, be it whatever else. And so I think the challenge is more around what's your operating model around the people and the culture? How do you incentivize people to actually use AI to actually make a big difference, right? So there's kind of 3 metrics. You can increase your revenue, you can increase productivity, you can drive, generating new experiences. And whatever experimentation that you do has to translate into that. So what I see in enterprises is this idea of, they'll have a central team that's going to be doing, AI transformation. There's going to be some pilots, experiments that are not really tied to any real business value. And so I think it's a mix of incentives. It's a mix of what are you measuring and how are you measuring it. And then, change management. How do you get a large ship to move in this direction? It's going to be slow. You have to figure out who's ready. How do you get people to actually make that change? A lot of it is management needs to understand. But the failure is not a technology failure. The failure is the inability to see the business problem and find the right technology solution to it, I guess.
So, so if I go and set my organizational KPIs, my developer productivity KPIs to be how many tokens they are burning, maybe they're not the right.
I mean, those are, there's a lot of vanity metrics. We have to start somewhere. So, okay, fine. For the first 3 months, 6 months, you're, okay, how many licenses are active? What's our adoption for, ChatGPT versus Gemini versus, Replit, whatever you're using, right? But at some point, it's like, okay, so we have all these tokens that are being burnt. Have we actually increased our top line? A lot of enterprises focused on, efficiency, productivity. And the thing is that you can get really, really efficient, but then you just end up reinvesting that back into the business. It's not growing your revenue. So the real transformation is in finding ways to increase top line. And that's through new product lines, new experiences. And that's where I think is the exciting, innovative thing to focus on, and not just, efficiency. I think that's what, unfortunately, a lot of the bigger companies are failing to see. The real potential, the real unlock is how do you use AI or any technology to drive top line versus efficiency.
Yeah, and also, I think this concern about the time that you're saving as a result of AI productivity, how are you reclaiming or repurposing that time? Because if it goes into writing longer emails, or people are now previously meetings used to be 30 minutes, now they are an hour long because we have more time, right? So AI is doing the work. So I think that part is also.
Yeah, and what's your plan? Sure, you're saving tons of hours. What are you doing with that?
What are you doing with the saved hours, right?
So time saved is not a good enough metric, but are you now able to push more content, like in gaming, right? If you reduce the cycle time in creating an asset, are you now deploying, weekly drops for a game? And then that's resulting into monetization, whatever that is. Your save time is not the business metric. It's like, what are you doing in that additional time that you have to drive revenue?
Yeah. So, Manisa, I will ask you the next question. How important do you think is security, governance, and compliance in this bigger adoption picture?
Yeah, I mean, after at the end of the day, listening to all of the panelists, I think it's not lost on anyone that is one of the biggest blockers that there is to adoption at scale at this time. As you have these agentic systems and autonomous agents, and they have they're acting independently, they have a broad set of permissions, access, and impact. And so having end-to-end security solutions across a whole host of things, so whether it's identity or lifecycle management, or even permissions management, et cetera, is super important. And then I really do believe security is like a best-of-breed space, because you're going to pick the best solution for the problem. You're not going to wait. And so I feel like there's a ton of opportunity also, but it is the biggest blocker by far to adopting AI. And then the other thing you see is that attacks are becoming a lot cheaper and better with AI as well. And so how do you respond to that with using AI as well at scale? Tons of opportunity.
And one of the very commonly cited incident is that Air Canada lawsuit, right? So a customer sued Air Canada in court because their chatbot misfired and the assistant, and the court actually ruled in favor of Air Canada. So Ghazi, you're my favorite startup, like Replit, outside of my own startup, right? So So Replit actually, the claim is that you make it incredibly easy. I saw your post about this Replit 101 being taught at colleges, right? So universities, they should start teaching Replit. So in your opinion here, right? So if companies like smaller companies, they start building their CRM system or their internal products, do you think the SaaS as we know it, is SaaS dead?
Yeah, that's a interesting question. I actually do a lot of podcasts and customer conversations, and this comes up all the time. And the real world answer is yes. It depends. So yes, and it depends. And I'll explain that here in a minute. So I talk to customers every single week, every single month, all diverse customers in different segments, different verticals. And what's happening out there right now is it varies by segment. So down market and SMBs, I'm seeing that all the time. So companies that are starting up and the new startups, they're building their stack differently. And we're seeing companies use applications like Replit to build their CRM. We're seeing companies use applications like Replit to build the instance of Workday, down market. So we are seeing down market SaaS replacement happening quite a lot. Up market, it's different. So up market, if you're like a GPMC, you're not going to get rid of your system of record. But what you are going to do is you're going to use like tools like Replit to make your UI better, right? And put layers on top of that to make it much more flexible. And we're internally a perfect example of that. So we have a Salesforce underlying architecture, but everything we're building on top of Salesforce is a Replit app. So for instance, we're building our own version of our forecasting app, which we're calling Replit Forecast, which is basically a replacement of Clary. We're also building our own customer health dashboard, which would basically be an equivalent of a Gainsight. But again, the underlying infrastructure is Salesforce. So it varies by segment and by size, but definitely down market, we are seeing a lot of software SaaS replacement happening.
Yeah. And you see that happening within companies that they are building their own tools?
They're building their own tools. They're basically building instead of buying a Salesforce license, they would be building their iteration of a CRM.
It's a little over $40,000 per year for HubSpot for me.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, it's happening quite a lot.
Yeah. So, and I will now actually ask a question. Any of you can take it, right? So in terms of an organization, when we bring in agentic AI, it could be Azure, AWS, Bedrock, Copilot, any of those tools. What are some of the changes within an organization or some kind of structural transformations that you would recommend within the operating model of the organization that will actually make it more conducive to adoption of AI? What are some of the friction points in your opinion and don't have to be technical, right?
Yeah, no, and I think Thor kind of alluded to it. At least what I found to really get the organization galvanized is you do have to measure. You do have to measure, and you have to take some bold goals together and say, hey, these are goals that we're going to accomplish. You can inspire. You can spark fear, but really, I think taking joint goals and then actually measuring and that you're all in it together really seems to deliver results, at least as I've seen it, between teams that succeed and actually delivering business outcomes versus teams that, do toy projects.
The biggest question we see is, so if you look at Replit, we have a B2C business and we have a B2B business, right? So on the B2B side of the house, when we're talking to enterprises, 90% of our users are actually non-developers and non-engineers. So they're knowledge workers within an organization. There are people sitting in marketing teams. There are people sitting in finance team, HR teams, product teams, design teams. So the biggest question we get around the adoption of AI is not so much what you can do with it. It's like, what are the next 50 things you can do? If you're somebody sitting in RevOps, yeah, you can maybe get off and do 10 applications initially, but what can you do after that? So we're actually working really hard internally to actually come up with like an asset library by role. right? So again, we're thinking, do we build this ourselves? Do we use partners to go build this for us? But basically a list of use cases or real world examples that are a continuous drip of information and assets that people can actually go use. That's the biggest gap that I see out there.
Go ahead. I mean, I think there's two ways, right? You can either build your stack from scratch, right? If you're a new company, it's kind of easy to do. For older enterprises, you have to sort of re-engineer and work backwards. And so what I'm seeing is in the second piece of it, that last mile integration, that, what are the most tedious workflows and how do you actually, make them AI native? That's where the biggest unlock is. And so going through and sort of documenting, if it's finance, if it's marketing, if it's, tech, whatever, what are your biggest workflows that you think need to be transformed because they're tedious or slow, or you can drive some value from it, and then kind of go and do that. And I think the biggest unlock is sort of last mile integration. Like if it's Copilot, ChatGPT, whatever, how do you, for example, let's say I'm making a game and we need to generate like the main character, and there's a head and there's a hair and there's a body and there's the clothing and the voice, right? All of those things together. Now there's an old school way of doing that. How do you integrate into that old school way modules that, okay, I can, now that we have all of this data around, let's say, clothing, my AI module will need 10 different pieces of the clothing that you're looking for. You can kind of build this model and then push it out, versus the previous maybe workflow was you had a tech artist, an engineer, somebody who works on the engine, that they're all sitting down, they're figuring this out. There's graphics work to be done in the engine, there's physics work to be done. So it really is very dependent on the business. But the biggest unlock is this last mile integration.
Yeah, I would just add, I'm glad that they left the easiest one for me. I would say the data quality and data governance, it's nothing new like that the quality of the data has been important to enterprises for forever. But because these agentic AI capabilities are so powerful and can access vast amount of data, it becomes a major problem if you don't have the right hygiene around data and around governance. So you essentially need a comprehensive governance strategy, and you also need to make sure that the agent will do what it finds in the data in the enterprise. So how do you keep the data fresh? It's not stale and all of that. How do you have the right evals? I think as somebody mentioned. So that's also an important part of it. It's not a new thing, but in this new world of agentic AI, it's become a much bigger and much urgent problem.
So AI is not going to fix everything for me.
Yeah, I mean, so far maybe we'll have agents that can figure out but you have to have it. In all seriousness, I think there's a grounding truth, right? There's a source of information where everything starts. So at some point, agents need to start somewhere, and humans are. I mean, I don't it's maybe you'll ask that question and I'll preemptively answer. Yeah, I don't think I will replace all human jobs. I think our focus will shift, but there's so many other problems that need to be solved. So I think agents will do great where humans are actually, it's a scale problem. Like for instance, I'll give you, I'm going to go on a tangent, but I think this example really drove home for me. A month ago, I changed jobs. And in my prior company, I had this agent, much like of all enterprises are putting stuff out there. And it had quality issues. And in my new role, I have the similar agent, and it's been such a game changer. Like it answers which plan should I choose, when I'm talking to people, how do I prepare for one-on-ones? There's so much that I'm able to drive from that agent alone that I feel like it's not replacing my job. It's given me superpowers. So I think a lot of that will happen. Some jobs will get disrupted, but I think that will happen as well. So that's the answer to your question.
And there's this tribal knowledge question, right? So, I'm in a factory, I have, someone knows that this machine, when it just doesn't work, you have to kick it, right? Or maybe unplug it and plug it back again, right? So there's a lot of organizational wisdom that that's not documented anywhere. Right? So that's definitely, there's so many other things that will still need human oversight. I remember a very interesting incident, by the way. So we built this technical support assistant for a company, big enough company, a tech company. And so the CEO comes in and asks a question, who's the CEO of this company? The company, our assistant, the previous CEO's name, and the CEO, of course, was not very excited about it. And eventually we found out, hey, whatever you tell it, if the data given to it has the name of the previous CEO, that's going to happen. So you mentioned that the governance aspect of it, right? So can you tell us, what does governance entail if you want to squeeze value out of it, right? So what does governance entail in the context of agentic AI?
I can take a stab at it. I think Maneza is the most qualified person to answer that. But I think the thing, like I said, this is not a new problem, and I'm repeating myself for the fourth time. But it becomes important because you are able to access all kinds of data faster and at a scale that was unprecedented, right? So governance could, at the simplest level, it could be what kind of permissioning model do you have? Like what data can agent access? You don't want your agent to be, sharing salaries of your colleagues with you. So how do you actually build that? How do you think about that? Previously it was a problem, but the scale was, like I said, you didn't have an agent that could scan hundreds of thousands of records to try to answer your question within a few seconds. Now it can. So you need to think about permissioning, you think about auditing, lineage, all of that. So all that is relevant, but if you want to add something.
Yeah, no, the thing I'd add, I think there's two classes of things. One is just kind of all of the permissioning stuff, right? If you've got an agent, then can look at user-reported fish, like what email does it have access to? So there's all of the access-related and exfiltration type governance. I think the second piece, I think Adnan, you also alluded to this one, is the what is the ground truth and the pressure it puts on systems of records. I'll give you an example. So for example, you'll have finance or HR come and give you monthly reports. And often those systems of records do not actually have the right numbers. So there's a whole lot of massaging that is done to the data that's in the systems of record to produce the report. And if an agent is off, looking at the system of record, it will bring back kind of the wrong answer, kind of what you said. And on the flip side, if it pulls from the reports that humans have already manually adjusted, then it would be accurate information. So I think on both sides, there's pressure. There's on permissions, access, and then also now, on the systems of record. And then you've got everybody. I think, Ghazi, you brought this up where it's actually the non-technical people that are building these agents. So now you've actually truly democratized that access that we have been trying to do for, at least since I started. We're going to democratize access. We have democratized that, but now we just need to make sure it's accurate as well.
Yeah, the only thing to add to that is that democratizing software creation is IT's worst nightmare, right? So when you're talking to large B2B enterprise clients, that's what we have to go convince IT stakeholders, that while you can have knowledge workers go out and build, you can build in a secure way, in a governed way. So we have this concept of kind of like an eagle-eye cockpit, where not only do you have permission-based access, you can also control what happens if something doesn't pass a security scan. Can you actually shut it down? Can you actually control who the users are by department, or can you actually control it? So that's the biggest question that you have to satisfy with IT. And we see that all the time. We're in very, very large financial services organizations, we're in government agencies, federal institutions, and their biggest question is hey, can I still have control? I like the idea that anyone can build, but I still want control.
And Zazi, maybe I will use this comment as a segue here. So I read somewhere that 85% of Fortune 500 companies, they use Replit. Is that number correct?
That's right.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. So have you seen any unexpected, any surprising use cases? The people were using Replit in a way that you said, hey, you never thought that they will start building these things?
With B2B, and so with B2B customers, there's a lot of prototyping use cases. We see that a lot right now as prototyping use cases. And then we're also seeing now internal tools being created on Replit. Nothing really surprising with B2B clients out there. Again, it varies by industry and by role as to what's being created. But nothing really surprising on the B2B side. On the consumer side, there's some really interesting stuff that people are building on the consumer-facing side of the house. People have actually started their own businesses and are making money. And this is all public posting. You can actually Google and public reach it. There's a person who started a business. He made basically $8 million ARR in his first year off of Replit. Had no idea how to go out and code, right? So we see a lot of entrepreneurs who didn't have access to coding before utilize a technology like Replit to basically start their businesses and start really accumulating wealth in a very, very short amount of time.
So perhaps not directly related to the panel topic, but what happens to software engineers? I mean, if Replit, tools like Replit and Cloud Code, they pick up. Yeah. So what happens?
So I'm not an engineer or a developer, but I've got some opinions on that, right? I mean, developers and engineers, I don't think they're ever going to go away. Right? I mean, I think what's going to happen is they'll focus on other mission work, software creation, if you will, right? I mean, historically, as everyone knows, the SDLC lifecycle is changing in front of our eyes right now. Prior to AI, if you needed an idea built, you would have the IT bottleneck of taking it to IT to actually get your idea built. Now, if we're democratizing that, anyone can build. Maybe engineers can focus their time on other initiatives within the company outside of that. So we'll see.
A lot of organizations right now, they're positioning adoption of AI as a cost-cutting measure. Do you think that is the right positioning? I mean, how would you think that it should be positioned? Because it really instills fear in people. So, hey, are we going to lose a job? And then strictly from a transformation standpoint, you are going to actually face resistance within the organization. So what do you think is the right way to position?
I mean, I can just start and I'll let others chime in here. So we face this all the time, even as an AI company. And the answer to that is there's certain roles and certain things that can be replaced. As an example, like customer support. We're utilizing a lot of AI, and we actually dog food Replit within Replit a lot. So we build a lot of support-related apps on Replit. A lot of that is no human involvement at all. But what we encourage a lot of our teams to go out and do is think of a AI-first org structure. And what that means is running leaner teams. So a perfect example is revenue operations. Many of you know what the RevOps function is in organizations. They're the ones who actually build systems. They look at deal desks. They build the tools. Historically, a RevOps team could be like big as 30, 40 people right now. We're basically running a lean RevOps team of like less than 10 people because we're actually utilizing agents to do a lot of the automation, but we still actually have human oversights and humans in the role. So I think that philosophy kind of applies by department is what can you use and how can you leverage AI to run a leaner organization and an efficient organization? That's the way I think about it.
I mean, to me personally, I prefer it straight up and, just say it like it is. But I do think our roles are just going to change. They have changed before. If you have been around long enough, you have seen that transition. It's coming at us faster than it has before. It's not new that resistance is not new. I was part of managed databases business. It was the same there. The DBAs were like, why are you automating or managing away the things that, I take pride in, but things do change and shift as new technology comes along. And so I think it is, I come back to let's inspire. Let's not hide behind platitudes or other words, be direct, but then also inspire on what is the art of the possible. How can we reimagine the job to be done? Let's focus on the job to be done and reimagine it and recreate ourselves in that reality.
That's a very interesting point. So we went through this exercise at my own company, and then I sent out a memo. And the first, HR actually told me that they have started receiving this question: are there any layoffs coming at the company? Because there's no on the horizon. There is no layoff coming. I very carefully actually chose the messaging, but still the concern was that we are talking about efficiency, we are talking about using AI. There must be something happening. So I think there is this fundamental mistrust that organizations they have to navigate when they are messaging this, right? Yeah. And I mean, industry-wide layoffs they don't help either, right? So
yeah. And I would just quickly bring back to the very first analogy that I used with the cloud adoption in the early days of cloud. I think the emphasis on cost-cutting measures were misplaced even for cloud at the beginning, because people who migrated with that mindset quickly found out that initially they did not get the value right away. It took them a while. So I think some of this is the maturity in organizational communication as enterprises start talking, because I think there's a lot of, I would say, immaturity in how enterprises are talking about some of these initiatives. I'm glad that you sent out a note and you were very clear in doing that. But if you're just all focusing on efficiencies and all of that, it's a very natural human, emotion that you kind of evoke from there. But I think ultimately it'll shift from the cost cutting to the actual, just like born in the cloud companies could move faster, Netflix could disrupt the entire the movie industry and all of that. I think we'll start seeing those cases, and then the emphasis will shift from, I can reduce cost, to I can do something really like differentiated and new. And that is where the industry will go. And I think that is why I continue to believe that we will all have jobs, but different kind of jobs. So we'll stay employed. Don't worry about it. So.
Okay. So I got the signal that we have only 4 more minutes, right? So maybe I'll just go around and think of this as rapid fire questions. Whoever wants to take it, right? So let's have some fun exercise. One AI buzzword you want banned forever.
Can you repeat that?
So is there any AI buzzword that you want banned forever?
Vibe coding.
Raza, you?
I actually don't like the term.
You don't like the term, right? So because it gives bad vibes about...
vibe coding just has a different vibe to it, right? I mean, vibe coding, otherwise, like, it's a toy. I think the term needs to evolve.
Doesn't it change you selling Replit either, right? So, yeah. So Replit is not a vibe coding tool, right? So,
we are. I mean, we still are until the industry changes it.
Yes, absolutely.
Kind of done the whole term agentic AI at the moment.
Interesting. Okay.
It's become, what does it mean? So it's just a buzzword sometimes. Okay. Dig a little bit deeper.
Great. So if you have a company and your current company, your AI strategy written by Chat or ChatGPT or Claude, any of the tools, or by a McKinsey consultant, which one would you prefer?
ChatGPT.
100%
Claude.
Anyone working for McKinsey here, guys? Anyone? Okay. So we have maybe 2 more questions here, then we'll take it too.
You're killing all the fun. You're just trying to have fun.
One SaaS category that won't exist in near future.
Okay,
one SaaS category that won't exist in near future.
Razi should take that.
That's a tough one. I would say customer insights, something that can be replaced in support.
I think customer support, yeah. I agree.
Customer support would exist, okay. That sounds good. Okay, so I think what we should do is we should spend the last 2 minutes. If anyone has any questions from the audience, there is, so Moby, I will let you prioritize. Please go for it.
Whoever I see first. Thank you.
Hi, excuse me. So I think I was one of the guys who raised the hands initially when you asked if we thought our jobs are going to get replaced. So as a mid-level experienced engineer, and actually I'm going to connect this talk with the previous talk that we had around building startups. How do we find the right problem to solve? Let's say as an engineer, if I'm trying to build a startup, something that is not just another AI wrapper. I know you guys also talked about being knowledge workers and they're utilizing creating their own tools. Like I think Ghazi said, different companies are building their own SaaS tools. So, but I feel like it's just a matter of time before the new models evolve and they build those knowledge into the newer models. So then what we build just becomes in the AI wrapper. So how do we identify and solve for the right problem? That's the question.
I mean, I think fundamentally problem solving is not about, oh, there's a new technology, so now I'm going to go find a problem to solve, right? There has to be a problem that is not a nice to have solve, but it's I've got a headache, I need an aspirin, or I'm going to die, right? It has to be a painkiller problem. And then you go and say, okay, somebody is going to really pay me well to solve this problem. And then you go and try to figure out how do you actually build for it. So I think the mechanics of that don't change. You don't start with the solution. You always start with the problem. You always start with the customer. And then you work with the customer to go build. I think what's changed is where an MVP or PLC would take you, several months or, years to build right. You can whip out a pretty good MVP very quickly. And so your validation phase is shorter, right? You can fail faster. So if you have an idea, you can validate it very quickly, either tweak it or kill it, move on to the next one. So it maybe shortcuts the time to actually build something valuable. So that's kind of my personal belief is building anything doesn't happen because a new technology has come about. Building anything is because there's fundamentally a problem that asks to be solved and you have to go after the problem.
Okay. Thank you, Farah, and thanks for the question. So all of us are going to be hanging out, so please feel free to reach out. Moby has been signaling. I have to stop now. Thank you so much, everyone.